King of France. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 Threesome. At this time, the National Assembly was in a lunch break, and the members who had been doing oral exercises for a day were discussing the debate in groups of 3 or 5 in the meeting hall. At this time, a gentleman quickly came to Talleyrand and whispered to him. Fouche, who was beside Talleyrand, immediately raised his eyebrows sharply and looked over here with concern. Talleyrand noticed Fouche's gaze, and without waiting to ask, he lowered his voice and said, "Just now, it's like this, Frost." He told all the news he had just received. Fouche was shocked. Send a public official directly to the guillotine? If we send him to the guillotine, at least the members of the entire parliament will vote as a jury. Talleyrand, why do you only pay attention to these unimportant places? The important thing is that he clearly ordered the troops not to follow the resolution of the parliament. Although it is just a small issue with the title of divisional general, but... Talleyrand did not continue to speak, looking at the three giants Robespierre, Marat and Danton who were discussing with each other on the podium. His expression was very complicated. But Fouche pointed it out directly. I'm afraid that the de facto military dictatorship has been formed. The three giants here combined are not as influential as the one outside. Fouche had pointed it out, and Talleyrand no longer covered it up and took over the conversation. Now you are only one battle away from becoming the protector of France. As long as you can repel the coalition forces, you don't need a big victory, just a miserable victory. No, as long as it's a draw, you will be our Caesar. Talleyrand had been using honorifics to refer to General Frost throughout the whole process. Fouche nodded. Yes, Your Excellency has gone from being a leather worker to becoming the most powerful person in France. This journey is legendary. As Fouche spoke, he was thinking about whether to go to Frost's hometown first and provide for the general. No, Your Excellency's family. And Talleyrand was obviously thinking about something else. At this time, Robespierre ended his conversation with the other two giants and began to knock on the podium with a small hammer to inform the parliamentarians that it was time for another meeting. After the parliamentarians came back and took their seats one after another. When everyone was almost seated, Robespierre was about to continue the previous topic. At this time Talleyrand suddenly stood up. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak. Robespierre's mouth twitched. The incorruptibles naturally had some conflicts with Talleyrand, the chameleon, but Talleyrand had funded the Jacobins' activities in Paris to a certain extent, so Robespierre forced a smile. Please, Mr. Bishop. Talleyrand came to the podium, cleared his throat, and then said sternly, yesterday, we passed a bill to change the previous military ranks to revolutionary and republican ranks. But obviously, we overlooked one thing, that is, military ranks, which play a role in distinguishing between superiors and subordinates in the army, and it plays a vital role in stabilizing the chain of command. Of course, our starting point is good, to abolish the difference in titles to highlight the spirit of equality. But this will cause big problems on the battlefield. Therefore, I suggest that we review this resolution now and come up with more detailed titles that can distinguish positions in the chain of command. Mr. Frost was busy with military affairs and did not protest to us, but he has pointed out our mistakes with actual actions. Talleyrand spoke eloquently, as if he had become General Frost's confidant in Parliament. Fouche sat below and nodded repeatedly. You are still the most ruthless, Talleyrand. Moreau went to the Paris Security Command again and received the flag of the 67th Battle Infantry Brigade. He looked at the plain flag with the Arabic numeral 67 in his hand, and then looked up at the flags flying on the gate of the Palace of Versailles. They were the flags of the 1st Training Brigade, the regimental flag of the Order of Ceremonial Knights, the regimental flag of the Order of Sunset Knights, and the company flag of the 1st Accurate Shooter Company. Each of these flags had complex patterns and looked elegant and majestic. It was obvious that this unit had a glorious history. Moreau looked down at the flag in his hand again. On the blue, white and red colors of the Republic, there was a number 67 printed on it, which was extremely perfunctory. Moreau couldn't help but pout. Although he still couldn't accept that he had become the commander of a brigade, when he saw this simple brigade flag, he couldn't help but want to add some content to this flag with his actions. Moreau sighed and looked up, just in time to see another officer who was also looking at the simple brigade flag in his hand with a bitter face. The number 66 was written on the officer's brigade flag. Morrow remembered the general's words, "Don't refuse, the commander of the 66th Brigade is also a rider." Morrow carefully observed the rider, but he didn't look like one because he was too black. At this time, France did not have the influence in West Africa that it would have in later generations, especially along the Mediterranean coast, where the Ottoman Empire was still there. But the French were not unfamiliar with black people, because the French also opened many plantations in the New World, and they also participated in the triangular trade. One of the important purposes of the French Revolution was the liberation of people of color, but it never became a trend. At this time, pointing to a black man and saying this is a rider, Morrow could not believe it no matter what. He walked forward curiously. "Excuse me, are you a rider?" The black man was shocked and looked up. Only then did Morrow realize that this man was not as black as he had thought. Judging from his skin color, he should be the illegitimate child of a French landowner and a black maid in a colony like Haiti. This kind of illegitimate child is surprisingly quite common. After all, this is France. The only places with more illegitimate children than France are probably Austria and Italy under Austrian rule. What? The black man looked confused. Although I have written sonnets, no one in Paris is willing to listen to me recite them. I am a private. What about you? Morrow, I'm a lawyer. That, His Excellency the General said you are a writer. The black and white mixed race man smiled bitterly. I don't know why His Excellency the General misunderstood after seeing my last name. Morrow, who are you? Oh, sorry, you should introduce yourself before asking people's names. I am Jean-Victor Marie Morrow, as I said just now, a lawyer. The black and white mixed race man shook the hand that Morrow extended. I am Thomas Alexander Dumas. My family is an aristocratic family with 4 generations in the army, but as you can see, due to my bloodline, I can only start from a private soldier. Morrow, oh, the surname Dumas. It's my mother's surname. Because I can't enjoy the protection of my father's family in the army, I simply use my mother's name. I want to clear the name of my black mother. Alexander Dumas said hesitantly. But he immediately became deflated. But, a private shouldn't be allowed to become a brigade commander directly. Morrow, haven't you learned how to be a brigade commander? Of course I have learned it. I have carefully studied all the knowledge needed to become a qualified officer. But I have been a private in the French army for so long, I gave up, and was ready to be promoted to sergeant and retired to go home to retire, and suddenly I was given the position of brigade commander. The general was very surprised and asked me what kind of rider I was. In fact, Ning had confused himself. He saw that the man was called Alexander Dumas, and he was dark, so he thought that this man was Alexander Dumas père. However, this man was actually Alexander Dumas père's father. According to the seniority, he should be called Alexander Dumas. But at this time, no one could interpret this matter. So Morrow could only stare at Alexander Dumas père. At this moment, a new clamor came from the headquarters. I protest. I want to see the general. A 40-year-old middle-aged man with messy hair said angrily, I'm an architect. I came to join the army to help you repair the fortress. I'm not here to command an infantry brigade. At this time, Morrow and Alexander Dumas père noticed the flag in the middle-aged man's hand. A simple number 68 was shown on the tricolor flag. It seems that this is the brigade commander of the 68th Battle Infantry Brigade. The brigade commander was still yelling, I'm an architect. I can only build things, not fight. Morrow and Alexander Dumas went over together, holding the man's shoulders on the left and right. Morrow, don't worry, men. I figured it out. Now the general wants all literate people who can calculate artillery trajectories to be officers. I'm a lawyer, and that guy over there is a rider. Alexander Dumas, I'm a private. Not a rider. But your son will be, and a super good one, so it doesn't matter. The architect sighed, well, I almost guessed it. How can such an army fight a war? Morrow, relax, our general is still a cobbler. I am the commander of the 67th Battle Infantry Brigade, a former lawyer, Jean-Victor Marie Morrow. Alexander Dumas, I'm the commander of the 66th Battle Infantry Brigade, Thomas Alexander Dumas, a former private. I don't know why I was mistaken for a rider. The architect sighed and shook hands with the 2 men in turn. I am the commander of the 68th Battle Infantry Brigade and a former architect, Jean-Baptiste Kleber. I'll look forward to your guidance in the future. Chapter 227 Messina's Victory over Cali. And Ning didn't know that a strange little group consisting of black riders, fake architects and lawyers had been formed just outside his headquarters. He was having a headache over the selection of army commanders. 7 armies. And Ning was shocked. He originally thought that 3 armies for 200,000 people would be enough according to the habits of later generations, but Berthier told him to organize it into 7 armies. After all, in this era, an army has a small number of people, only about 20,000 to 30,000 people. If it were the standard of later generations, 7 armies would be 7 columns, and with 7 columns, they would be able to conquer the world. Berthier, 15% of the division commanders and brigade commanders are former old aristocrats. Regardless of their loyalty to the Republic, their military skills are still good. The rest are staff recruited from all walks of life, intellectuals and other civilians with a certain reputation. They are very loyal to the Republic, but basically have no military knowledge. We urgently printed some pamphlets to start training, but we can't expect them to perform well on the battlefield. And Ning held his forehead. He had read the Napoleon biography of the marshals, and he didn't remember much about ordinary officers, otherwise he could point out those officers who joined the army hastily and performed well in the Napoleon era according to his memory of his previous life. Anyway, now there are so many civilians who have become brigade commanders and division commanders, it wouldn't be a big problem for him to add a few more. It's a pity that he didn't remember so much. And Ning, under this situation, it is obviously unrealistic for us to have a regular frontal decisive battle with the enemy. After all, the enemy is a regular army. Berthier nodded. Yes, this is completely different from our previous situation. Before us, although the troops were all ordinary patriots and the officers were all civilians, they had undergone rigorous training, so they behaved with the same discipline and order as the regular army. Then the revolution gave them high morale, and it is normal that such troops are more combat savvy than the Austrian army. But now we have a group of mobs in our hands. And Ning, we can only deal with it by building a strong camp and fighting a stupid battle. The good news is that we have several rivers that can be used as defensive barriers. We will deploy ladder defenses by the river, use space to buy time, and use manpower to pile up the enemy. Let the troops set off now. Berthier, makes sense. But before the troops set off, we have to decide on the army commander first. The selection of the army commander must be very careful. I tend to choose old officers with certain military experience, and there are still a few generals who support the Republic. And Ning curled his lips, thinking that after driving away the enemy, he would have to rack his brains to remove the military power of these old soldiers, right? The system of the old French army requires that only nobles who have inherited for 4 generations can become senior officers. Therefore, the generals of the old French army are basically great nobles. Now the Republic is beheading old nobles like an assembly line, and you really can't expect their loyalty. After a brief thought, Ning rejected the idea. No, it's okay for a grassroots officer, but the waves that a lieutenant colonel can cause are limited after all. The person who commands an army must be loyal and reliable. Just choose someone who is prestigious in society to be the army commander. Everything is up to you. Berthier immediately agreed respectfully, but then changed the subject. But these teachers, painters, and businessmen can't really be expected to be excellent commanders. Is it, like before, you appoint some people to be army commanders? Anyway, you're going to find inexperienced people, so why not? Berthier has always had some opinions about Ning's various promotions on the front line, but this time he took the initiative to ask Ning to nominate some prestigious celebrities to be army commanders. It can be seen that the situation has become so embarrassing that the chief of staff has to settle for second best. And Ning scratched his head, feeling troubled. He had to have a reputation that could convince the people, and he also had to have military talent and be able to fight well. The people that Ning had promoted before all performed very well, so there had always been rumors in the army that General Frost had received divine inspiration. Such rumors had side effects. If something went wrong with a person Ning recommended, he would immediately be retaliated against. After thinking about it, Ning shook his head. No, I don't know such a person. It's better for you and Laser to choose someone with a reputation to take the position. It meant that if something went wrong, I shouldn't be blamed. Ning has already obtained some famous generals, and is waiting to raise their military ranks in the next war. By then, if these celebrities don't perform well in the war, he can take the opportunity to replace them. Berthier didn't know Ning's plan. He frowned and didn't hide his worries at all. It's crazy. We are going to defeat the coalition forces of two old powers with such an army that is almost made up of laymen from top to bottom. And Ning patted his chief of staff on the shoulder. Believe in the great people of the great country. We are not facing the enemy alone. The whole of France is with us. Berthier corrected, it's 2/3 of France. At least 1/3 of the region has rebelled. And Ning thought to himself, what's the big deal? I have encountered much worse situations than this. In Europe a Universalist for rebels guarding the country's borders are no joke. Sometimes when the enemy country attacks, when the rebels explode, and Ning will run his army to the enemy's land and wander around, waiting for the enemy country to wipe out all the rebels on his land before coming back to fight the enemy army that has been severely injured. Thinking of his previous experience of playing games, and Ning even smiled. Berthier saw his smile and showed an expression of the general is really unfathomable. At this time, someone came in to report, an urgent letter from Nice. And Ning, give it to me. He walked to the messenger in 3 steps, snatched the envelope that the messenger had just taken out, and opened it. The letter was written by Messina. He led 15,000 French troops and took the initiative to attack. He defeated more than 30,000 Sardinian kingdom troops on the plain in front of Mondowie and was already at the gates of Mondowie. And Ning was overjoyed. While handing the letter to Berthier, he said, we must vigorously publicize Messina's victory. Now we urgently need good news to boost morale. We must tell our soldiers that the army of the Republic is a new army, an army armed with the ideas of the Great Revolution, and it is by no means comparable to the armies of these old kingdoms. Berthier, we should vigorously publicize it. By the way, don't we notify the Parliament? The Parliament has special envoys in Italy, and they will communicate. Well, let's tell the Parliament. After all, in theory, the Parliament is the highest authority in France, and we are just military generals appointed by the Parliament. Just as Ning finished speaking, another new messenger arrived. This time it was a messenger from the Parliament. Report, the Parliament has just passed an amendment to the new military ranks. In order to ensure the smooth flow of the chain of command, the ranks of Army General and Corps General have been added above the original highest rank of Division General. And Ning, what the hell, do they have to change the original military ranks of the Old Kingdom? There is no problem with such formalities not changing them, right? Berthier asked the messenger, who proposed to review this amendment? We just ordered to ignore the new military ranks of the Parliament yesterday, and we are here to revise it today. What a quick response. Messenger, it was Bishop Talleyrand. And Ning frowned, Talleyrand. Damn, this chameleon, could he think of me as a wall? Chapter 228 Napoleon at Sedan. While Ning was busy expanding the army and fighting wits with the Parliament, Napoleon finally saw the flag of the Prussian-Austrian coalition in Sedan. I thought they were going to drown in the mud of early spring in France. Napoleon muttered while watching the enemy change from marching columns to horizontal formations through a telescope. France's infrastructure is very poor now. Well, it has not yet entered the industrial age, so the infrastructure certainly cannot be compared with it after the Industrial Revolution. After all, cement has not been invented at this time, and asphalt is a rare paving material that can only be used in places where asphalt is produced. The rural roads in France are still specially leveled, but they can't withstand the spring rain. The mud caused the Prussian-Austrian coalition to advance slowly after crossing the border, and now they have only reached the front of the Sedan fortress. Napoleon even suspected that the Prussian-Austrian coalition was not motivated to fight and was deliberately dawdling. He put down the telescope and said to the adjutant beside him, hurry, let's get ready. Today the enemy should just make a tentative attack to test the strength of our defense. If we hurt them, they will have more concerns when they attack tomorrow. As soon as he finished speaking, the cannons of the Prussian-Austrian coalition fired. Napoleon hurriedly raised the telescope. Fire from such a distance. As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of a cannonball breaking through the air came, and then it hit the earth slope of the fortress wall with a sound of duong. The outer walls of the bastion are all inclined, which has a very high defense against cannonballs. The urban cannon may be able to blow open the walls of Constantinople, but it will definitely not be able to do anything to the walls of the bastion. Napoleon looked in the direction of the rising smoke. Well, it turns out to be a 24-pound cannon. No wonder they are advancing so slowly. It turns out that they have to push this thing forward. 24-pound heavy artillery is generally installed on warships. This kind of heavy artillery will be installed on the bottom deck of a first-class battleship. This thing is extremely troublesome to use on land because it is too damn heavy. I don't know whether it was the Prussians or the Austrians who pushed this heavy artillery to the front line and fired at the Sedan fortress. On the sea, this heavy artillery may destroy the wooden deck of the warship with ease, but on land, facing the thick inclined outer wall, even such a cannon is not a big deal. In this era, attacking a fortress is a pure meat grinder war, and the defenders can kill a large number of enemies with cleverly designed fortifications. To conquer a solid fortress like Sedan, the attackers have to carry out earthworks, which will be a long process anyway. Napoleon was now full of confidence. Humph, there is no need for reinforcements. With the troops I have now, I can stop the Prussian-Austrian coalition until the counterattack begins in July. Archduke Karl was observing the Sedan fortress through a telescope, and he admired while observing, the French military engineers did a great job. This fortress is very well built. I am afraid that the siege will be unusually long. I can only hope that hunger and epidemics will make the French surrender. Karl's chief of staff said worriedly, the nobles who escaped from Paris and led us said that the French army gathered in Paris. If we delay for a long time, we will probably have to face a large number of French troops. Although most of them may not have received any training, a smoothbore musket in the hands of a recruit is almost as deadly as in the hands of an old soldier. The smoothbore musket has poor accuracy, and there is not much difference between the old soldiers and the new soldiers. Although the old soldiers can reload more smoothly and quickly in theory, the poor firing rate of the smoothbore musket makes this advantage less important. Karl, no, this is not what I am most worried about. What I am most worried about is the enemy's generals. The cobbler. The chief of staff asked with some disdain. He may be of humble origin, but he must have outstanding military talent to defeat so many veterans. Moreover, he has always been very good at commanding this kind of ragtag army. He turned the ragtag army into an elite division. If we delay in these fortresses for too long, what we will face in Paris will not be a mob, but an elite army trained by fierce generals. We will be drowned by the vast French army. The chief of staff was a little unconvinced. The news came just yesterday that the entire western part of France has rebelled. Marshal Alvenzi and the Duke of Brunswick both believe that the French army we are facing is at most 200,000. Which is evenly matched with us. Everyone thinks that this estimate overestimates the French. Karl did not answer, but just stared at the battlefield. The Prussian-Austrian coalition forces that had just arrived launched a tentative attack on the fortress, and the coalition's battle infantry were approaching the bastion of the fortress. The troops at the front of the line had entered the trenches, and the French troops on the fortress were constantly firing, and the entire fortress was shrouded in smoke from the shooting. Karl, it won't work, no. It won't. I'm against wasting troops like this. We should surround the fortress first, station there, and then approach little by little through earthworks. Chief of Staff, you just said that we have to move fast, otherwise we will be drowned by the French. Moving fast is not the same as wasting troops like this. Karl sighed. In this battle, he was not the supreme commander. He could only watch the coalition forces try to attack the fortress according to the order of the headquarters, because Marshal Alvenzi and the Duke of Brunswick both felt that the French might not be prepared in a hurry. How the hell is this possible? Archduke Karl cursed in his heart while watching the lives of the Austrians and Prussians being consumed in vain in front of the sturdy fortress. At night, Napoleon ordered the precious dried meat and wine to be taken out to reward the soldiers who killed and wounded the enemy in large numbers today. During the banquet, Napoleon personally came among the soldiers. He was imitating his most admired General Frost, who liked to walk around his barracks in an approachable manner and ask the soldiers about their well-being. Everyone. Napoleon said as he stood on a baggage carriage and stood on the wine barrel on the carriage, today the coalition's attack was easily resolved by us, and they left a large number of corpses under our city. In the future, every day of their attack will surely be hit hard like today. We will be here to block them until the general's counterattack arrives. Napoleon took a big sip of wine, then smashed the iron wine glass to the ground, and said loudly, "The general told me that if we hold on firmly, there will be a way. After the victory of the war, he will personally welcome me. Just think about it, that's the French god of war, a Caesar-like figure, he will personally welcome us, it's exciting to think about it." Of course, His Excellency the General never skimped on material rewards. When he was in Italy, he promised everyone the glory of the conquest and the wealth of Italy, and he did it. Comrades! For the General, for the Republic, and for yourself. Cheers! Under the magic of fine wine, the soldiers shouted together, "For the General, for the Republic." At this moment, Neither Napoleon nor Archduke Karl knew that this was only the beginning of their fateful showdown. Chapter 229 I am the general's most proud disciple. In a blink of an eye, Napoleon had been defending Sedan for a week. After the initial 3 days of assault, the Prussian-Austrian coalition found that the fortress was well prepared and morale was high. It was unlikely to be captured in a short time by relying on a swift offensive, so they began the siege and earthwork. That morning, Napoleon had just woken up when the chief of staff came to report anxiously, "Acting Commander, today an Austrian officer surrendered to us because he yearned for the Republic." Napoleon was overjoyed. "What? There is such a thing? No, maybe it's a trick, I'll meet him later." Then Napoleon rushed to the command room of the fortress. In order to prevent the coalition forces from attacking at night, Napoleon slept directly in the command room and slept on the floor. The offensive finally slowed down in the past 2 days, and Napoleon returned to his room and slept soundly on the camp bed for several nights. When they arrived at the command room, the surrendered officer was drinking coffee. When he saw Napoleon come in, he quickly stood up and said, "Commander." "Napoleon, how do you know I am the commander? Is my name so famous in the Allied forces?" "No, it's because everyone said that the commander who commanded on the city wall these days is shorter, so." "Napoleon, Chief of Staff, I think this man is pretending to surrender." The Chief of Staff thought about it and didn't say anything. The Austrian said, "I have been deeply influenced by the Enlightenment and have read the works of Voltaire and Rousseau freely. I once went to the New World as a volunteer to participate in the North American Liberation War. I was deeply inspired by the republic established by the people of the New World." "Napoleon, you don't need to say so much. I will test you to find out whether you are really in favor of the republic. What is the greatest advantage of the French Republic for its survival now?" The Austrian thought for a while and replied, "Is it the advanced republican system? A system that conforms to the social contract theory and the doctrine of separation of powers." "Napoleon, shit. It's the people. Everyone is equal in the republic, so everyone is a master. This is called the spirit of ownership. This is the magic weapon for our army to win." The Austrian looked at Napoleon in confusion. "Whose doctrine is this?" "Napoleon, the proposer of the doctrine is not famous in the academic world now, and only those of us who are close to him know it. But in the future, many people will write books about him, just wait and see." "Ah." The Austrian seemed to understand, "So that's what General Frost said." I'm not familiar with the general, and I don't know the general." "Napoleon, huh? Come on, arrest him and detain him until the end of the fortress defense." Austrian, "I brought the latest intelligence." "Oh, really? Then tell me, how many people are besieging the fortress, and who is in command?" Because of the fierce attack in the previous few days, the coalition forces had not been able to climb up the walls of the fortress after breaking through the trenches, so the French army did not capture any prisoners, and there was no way to interrogate them. The Austrians were also straightforward. "You are facing 27,000 people from the Austrian Third Army and 35,000 people from the Prussian Second Army. Judging from the current progress of the earthwork, you will be attacked by 60,000 coalition forces in a few days." "Napoleon, then who commands this joint force?" The Austrians replied, "The Austrian side is Archduke Karl, and the Prussian army is led by General Franz. The two sides are separated by the north-south axis of the fortress, with the Prussian army on the west and the Austrian army on the east, with a junction in the middle. If you want to send a messenger out of the city, just go through the middle and you should be able to get away in the cover of night." Napoleon raised his eyebrows, looked at the Austrians again, and then asked what he thought was the most important question: "How can I trust someone who even betrayed his country?" The Austrian shrugged. "There are many French officers on the coalition side. They also betrayed their country, but they were reused, right?" Napoleon paced back and forth in the command room with his hands behind his back. After a few minutes, he said to the Chief of Staff, "We should lock him up. We can't afford to be used as a Trojan horse. But give him a better cell and provide him with meals according to the officers' standards." "Chief of Staff, officers' standards? But the officers in the city have already followed your orders and are held to the same standards as the soldiers. Then follow the original officer standards." Napoleon waved his hand. The Austrians were surprised. "What's going on? Do your officers and soldiers eat the same food?" Napoleon answered proudly, "This is the rule set by General Frost. On the front line, officers and soldiers eat the same food. When a general goes out to fight, he eats hard dry food all day long. On the day of the battle, his maid will prepare delicious wine and exquisite snacks for him. He will enjoy them on the battlefield, with the wonderful scene of the enemy being destroyed as a backdrop. The Austrians opened their mouths into an O shape. This. Napoleon, I assure you that everything I said is true. There is no exaggeration at all. The Austrians were amazed. I have heard of General Frost's deeds a long time ago, but I didn't expect it to be even more legendary than the legend. Is there a possibility that the legend was blown up by the close ministers of the general headed by you? The unknown Austrian surrendered general did not think about this possibility. Napoleon, lock him up. Wait a minute. The Austrian said again, don't you want to hear me tell you about the current deployment of the rest of the coalition forces? Napoleon snorted, picked up the pointer next to the map, and said while tapping on the map, I guess the rest of the coalition forces are now here, here, and here. The reason I made this guess is that it conforms to general military principles, and the deployed troops can fully protect the supply line. You will definitely want to bypass the two well-fortified fortresses of Sedan and Verdun and go back to Paris from a place further south. Napoleon said, drawing an arc on the map. But you won't succeed, he continued. The road over there can't support the consumption of a 200,000-man legion, and at most it can maintain a small unit of about an army. Your army will be resolutely sniped at this position. Napoleon's pointer slapped hard outside the map. After a few seconds, the staff found the corresponding map and put it next to the main map. Napoleon's pointer accurately hit the bend of the Marne River. You will be hit head-on here. I bet you can't cross the Marne River. It's even more impossible for you to go straight to Paris along the Marne waterway. The Austrians were shocked. This. You have been surrounded for a week and should have no information from the outside world, but you judged the situation so accurately. You. Napoleon, huh? What's the big deal? I am the general's most proud disciple. The general must have made the right judgment and made a plan long ago. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 beginning. At this time, Ning was in his headquarters, reading the enemy situation report that Berthier had summarized. Berthier invented a distinguishing mark to distinguish the enemy troops verified by reliable channels from the enemy troops inferred based on rumors. Ning, LaSalle did a good job. The reconnaissance was very detailed. In addition, Berthier, you did a good job. You were able to organize so many enemy reports. Berthier replied modestly, I just did what a chief of staff should do. Ning nodded, and then carefully observed the enemy situation on the map. The attacking enemy came from three directions. One direction has already started a fight with Napoleon in Sedan. The second direction will soon meet Verdun. Bernadotte is waiting for them there. The problem lies in the third direction. Ning looked at the enemy signs on the map and performed a picture-reading speech. Ning was very grateful to Berthier. If he hadn't slept only 3 hours a day and integrated the enemy intelligence so well, he would never have been able to grasp the situation so easily. Ning already understood why there was such a big difference between when the Emperor had Berthier as chief of staff and when he didn't. The difference couldn't be small. But Ning still had to pretend that he made the judgment based on his military accomplishments and talents. However, he immediately used his military common sense to select a preset position for sniping the enemy's third line of troops. Ning pointed at the bend of the Marne River with his pointer. It's here. We have to stop the enemy troops at this position. If we can't stop them here, and the enemy army breaks through to the plains between the Marne and Seine rivers, it will be very difficult to defeat them in a field battle with the current level of training of our army. We can only rely on numbers. Berthier, the troops we brought from Marseilles can be used in field battles. There won't be too many enemies because the logistics can't support it. Ning thought about it and shook his head. No, the troops brought from Marseilles must be used as battle reserves. This is our mainstay and cannot be moved easily. How many newly formed troops do we have that can set off immediately? Berthier, there are 27,000 reorganized troops. They are well armed, and they are equipped with uniforms and flags. However, there are not enough military musicians. We are still urgently training military musicians. Ning, send a call to the city of Paris. There are so many musicians in Paris, and the Republic needs them. Berthier, drag the musicians to the battlefield? No, I object to this. and Ning convinced his chief of staff in this way, and Beethoven pushed the door open and came in. I am willing to join the army as a military musician. And Ning, no. If you die, how the hell am I going to explain to future generations? I can't bear this responsibility. Beethoven argued, the flag of the Republic represents equality, fraternity and freedom. Equality is the first. I am willing to go to the battlefield as an ordinary soldier. And Ning, well, it's like this, even General Frost personally charged in times of crisis. I have been looking forward to such a day. After Beethoven finished speaking, David, who came in after him, said, he has long discovered that there are not enough military musicians, so he planned this day. It was because of this that he just eavesdropped on you talking outside. And Ning frowned, but you are a music saint. Your death will be a huge loss to the history of human music. Damn it, I can't say this. Beethoven said excitedly, moreover, I know that the first time the general went to the battlefield, he was a military musician. At that time, the general had not received any military education, military education other than military band training. He just participated in the battle as an ordinary military band member, and then he was awarded a medal. And Ning was a little helpless. Why, you also want to rescue a noble lady disguised as a man? Beethoven smiled, if so, of course I warmly welcome it. As a musician, I can't refuse such a romantic development. And Ning held his forehead. What else can he say at this time? Maybe if Beethoven came back alive from the battlefield, he would burst out with amazing creativity and write great works that have never appeared in history. And, it's just a defense across the river, it wouldn't be so unfortunate that Beethoven died, right? It's better to send him out now so that he doesn't have to be sent out in the field battle later. Now, if we fight 1 or 2 battles, we can get Beethoven back, and assign him the job of composing music that can inspire people and reflect the bravery of the soldiers on the front line, and put him in the rear from now on. So Ning decided, okay, you have said so much, I can only wish you a victorious return. Beethoven smiled and said, thank you, I feel more at ease with the general's blessing. To be honest, although I have seen the battlefield, I have not been able to sleep well since I decided to be an ordinary military musician. I have nightmares every day. As soon as I close my eyes, all I see are horrible nightmares pieced together from the tragic fragments I have seen on the battlefield in the past. And Ning, then do you want to compose a song to depict the horror you are facing? Beethoven, I will. Of course I will. But that is after I come back from collecting folk songs on the battlefield. Yes, collecting folk songs. This is real folk songs. I will definitely write a shocking song. No, even if you stroll along the Seine every day and watch the moon at night, you can still write a shocking song. And Ning suppressed her bitter smile and held Beethoven's hand. Well, I'm busy with military affairs, so I won't see you off. You can go find Lazarcano and ask him to assign you to the troops that are about to go to war. David, I'll go see him off. Alice, as a painter, I can only be a scout and draw maps if I want to join the army. Maps in this era were basically hand-drawn. And Ning, your duty is to follow me and draw the magnificent war scenes. These are precious historical records. David nodded, and then said goodbye with Beethoven. After the musicians and painters left, Berthier asked, do you need me to arrange the troops where Ludwig is as a reserve? And Ning, no, he will find out, he is so smart. Then he looked down at the map again. Now there is another question. Who will command this battle? Berthier, it would be great if Davout was here. And Ning, he can't split himself. Well, after thinking about it, I have to go in person. Berthier, your personal command will greatly increase the morale of our army. In a defensive war, this is a huge advantage. And Ning curled his lips and thought, at least I have this morale halo. In this way, and Ning selected the battlefield of the battle based on meticulous reconnaissance and enemy analysis, as well as the most basic military common sense. This was the beginning of a series of battles. Later, military historians collectively referred to this series of battles as the Three Rivers Campaign because the location of this campaign was right between the Marne River, the Seine River and the Somme River. Chapter 231 The eve of the expedition. On the night when the strategy was decided, and Ning's troops were preparing for the attack, Berthier was a workaholic and was still dealing with issues related to the troops' attack, such as supplies. At night, countless advance teams were sent to key nodes on the march to prepare for the army's departure. Although this army only had more than 20,000 people, The troops that received the order to attack also sat all night to prepare for departure. The 66th Battle Infantry Brigade was also among the troops to be dispatched. That night, the brigade commander Dumas took a group of people to the royal forest near Paris to hunt a few animals and give the whole brigade meat. The main function of the royal forest is to hunt for the king. If ordinary citizens do not have a special license, they will be hanged if they hunt in this forest. But now that the king has been exiled, the forest rangers have all joined the National Guard, so this rule is naturally no longer valid. In other words, due to geographical reasons, there are not many hunters in Paris, otherwise the people of Paris would have had a sufficient source of meat and their health would have greatly improved. While organizing a barbecue party for the whole brigade, Dumas also called 2 friends he made the day he became the brigade commander from his own brigade. When Moreau saw the barbecue party, he asked in confusion, "Aren't we going to set off tomorrow? Why are you still?" "It's because we are going to set off, so we replenish some meat. After the march begins, the dried meat in this supply is given to senior officers. Ordinary soldiers can't eat it at all. They can only eat dry bread and other things." "Kleber, is that so? Can you share some meat with our brigade?" "It should be possible, but it may be too late to take it back to your brigade." "Don't worry, ordinary soldiers will also have a chance to eat meat after the march begins. That is, when the battle situation takes a turn for the worse and the logistical supply is cut off, they can kill horses and eat horse meat." "Moreau, do you call this comforting? We are more worried after hearing this." "Okay. Kleber, don't worry, I heard that this march is commanded by General Frost himself. The general has always won battles before, so there will be no problem. This time should also be a victory, the difference is just how much we win." Dumas nodded. "Indeed, I have talked to the soldiers, and they are generally very optimistic. This makes me feel a little relieved. Damn, these people can't even sing the loading song. The loading of a muzzle-loading smoothbore rifle is very complicated." At this time, the French army has adopted prefabricated ammunition wrapped in paper, which simplifies the loading to a certain extent, but loading is still very long-winded. Therefore, in the French military manual, loading is broken down into several parts and then compiled into a song. When singing this song in actual operation, one step is completed after singing one sentence. Corresponding to this song, a military drum will be used to beat the rhythm. However, most of the National Guards recruited now have no military experience before. They are ordinary citizens in trousers. They don't understand any loading songs at all. Dumas said worriedly, "When the battle starts, our shooting will be quite messy. For such troops, except for the first round of volleys, it is impossible to form volleys at other times, and they can only fire randomly." Kleber shrugged. "At least the continuity of firepower will not be a problem." "Moreau, don't worry, think about who is commanding our troops: lawyers, writers and architects. No one will expect us to do anything earth-shattering on the battlefield. I bet the general will only put us in an insignificant place." "Dumas, I'm not a writer." Although the half-black corrected it very seriously, the other 2 did not care about it. "Kleber, I heard that the destination of this march is the Marne River. Any comments?" As he said that, he looked at Dumas, the only one with military experience. "Black man, we may have to fight a defensive battle. The enemy should come from the north of Alsace. This place cannot support a large army. It should be just a small army of the enemy." "Moreau, so the general decided to eat up the small enemy force first. Why not send out the experienced troops he brought from the south? I mean, those stationed in the Palace of Versailles outside the city. Maybe he wants us new recruits to get used to war." Kleber shrugged. "Anyway, the general always has a reason." And Ning sneezed. The Chinese have a saying that sneezing means someone is talking about you. And Ning rubbed his nose, thinking that there are too many people talking about me at this time. He was in the Jacobin Club at this time, explaining his plan to his friends. At this time Danton suddenly said, "Can you postpone your departure for a few days? We will organize a departure ceremony to boost the morale of the people of Paris." And Ning looked at Anton with an idiot look. "My friend, you know that speed is of the essence in war? Once the enemy crosses the Marne River, they will have no obstacles to reach Paris. Danton, aren't there 2 fortresses?" And Ning held his forehead. "The 2 fortresses are in the direction of Belgium and Luxembourg, just blocking the 2 major roads into France from the Duchy of Burgundy." "Robespierre, Duke of Burgundy, you are so knowledgeable about history. I now feel more and more that you are the illegitimate son of some nobleman, fostered in the home of a cobbler." At this time, The Duchy of Burgundy had disappeared for many years. And Ning knew this matter so well because players who have played France and Austria in Europa Universalis foreknow an event called the skull-splitting incident. The content of the event is that the head of the Grand Duke of Burgundy splits, literally, he dies, and then his territory is divided up by various powers. Through this event, French or Austrian players can eat up large tracts of rich areas for free. It may not be very important to Austria, after all, Austria is the Holy Roman Empire, and there are many rich areas. It is very important to French players. When Europa Universalis just started, France was far from the complete form it is now. Places like Normandy and Aquitaine were still occupied by the British. Relying on the cracked head to make a living, it is crazy. So every French player will try to crack the head. As an old French player, and Ning is very familiar with this event chain, and now he can say it out of his mouth. As a result, he inexplicably received a lot of respect from his friends. Mara raised his glass. Let's toast to the smart and knowledgeable Andy. So everyone raised their glasses. And Ning also took a sip, and then continued the topic that Denton had just raised. We can't wait any longer, we must set off tomorrow, so just wait for my good news. Robespierre asked seriously, are you sure? And Ning smiled, of course. Actually not. Although there were 2 battles of the Marne in the history of World War I, the battles took place in different places. The first battle of the Marne in World War I was mainly to block the German army from the north of Paris. Now the Prussian-Austrian coalition forces are coming from the direction of Alsace. Therefore, the history of the Battle of the Marne can't help a Ning at all. However, as a commander, and Ning could not show cowardice, so he answered his friend's questions firmly. Robespierre, then I wish you success. We are waiting for the news of your victory. Chapter 232. It's the fiancé's turn. After Ning returned to the Palace of Versailles from the Jacobin monastery, smelling of alcohol, Fanny whispered to him, Miss Christina is waiting for you on the terrace. And Ning, which terrace? There are quite a few terraces in the Palace of Versailles. Fanny, come with me. So Ning took off his coat and handed it to the attendant next to him, and then followed Ning's pace. The reason for wearing a coat is that although it is already spring, it is still very cold in France at this time. In fact, France in this era has only a few days of heat every year. Because of this, in the 21st century, only a small number of people in France still have air conditioning at home. After all, for them, summer is only a few weeks, and they can just endure it. Unexpectedly, the Little Ice Age passed directly and entered a warm era. As a result, Europe began to suffer from large-scale heat stroke. But this is not what Ning needs to worry about at this time. And Ning followed Fanny to the terrace and saw Christina wearing a very gorgeous evening dress. And Ning couldn't help asking, you are wearing so little, aren't you cold? Christina, yes, but I want to go to war tomorrow, and I want you to see the most beautiful me. And Ning took a step forward and hugged Christina's waist. I appreciate your kindness. Fanny retreated into the shadows like a ninja and disappeared. Christina said softly, I am beginning to miss the days when I was in the army, when I could go to war with you. Can't I not abide by this rule? Women who want to get married must first retire from the army. This is a rule that has been formed in this time and space for a long time. Christina has to abide by it too. And Ning didn't want to get engaged so quickly, fearing that it would affect the situation in France. As a result, she just sent Christina home and the situation changed suddenly. The brother-in-law was directly changed from execution to exile. So since it was affected anyway, and Ning didn't hide it and went directly to Mr. Pingdang to propose marriage. Now Christina is Ning's fiancée, so she retired from the army according to the rules and became a hostess with peace of mind. By the way, Mr. Equality was a bit of an untouchable in Paris because of Louis VI. Everyone cut ties with him for fear of being implicated when the king was beheaded. As a result, overnight, Mr. Equality became the most revolutionary and progressive good man in Paris, and everyone came up to him to make connections. Mr. Equality was in a very good mood. As soon as he got engaged, he took Ning to his study in the royal palace, took out a big account book, pointed at it and said, pick whatever you want, my dear prospective son-in-law. So Ning happily asked for the coal mine. Mr. Equality was still puzzled. Coal mine? That thing can only be used to burn steam engines in addition to heating in winter. Although it has been more than 10 years since what improved the steam engine, most people still don't realize the important role of coal. And Ning was also happy to play the role of a prophet at such times, so she said to Mr. Pingdang, My dear future father-in-law, didn't you read the report? The steam engine improved by the British what has great potential. I have ordered my craftsmen to go all out to manufacture steam engines and use them to drive spinning machines. Coal is the blood of the future economy. Although Ning was very excited, he did not infect Mr. Pingdeng. He shrugged. Really? Okay. It can only be said that foresight is a rare quality, and people with this quality are very rare. And Ning briefly recalled Mr. Pingdeng on the day of the marriage proposal, and his attention immediately turned to Christina. Holding Christina's waist, and Ning realized that his fiancée was still very strong, I mean, big muscles. After all, she has been in the army for so many years, it is normal to have muscles. Christina, I always thought that it was a small matter that I couldn't fight with you on the battlefield in the future. I thought the future would be no different from the past. But I was wrong. It turns out that sending you to the battlefield is such a difficult thing. I have been having nightmares since yesterday, dreaming of you. And Ning, don't worry, I am very tough. I didn't get hurt so many times before. Christina, it is because you didn't get hurt before that it is possible to exhaust your good luck, isn't it? After a short pause, she said in a soft, pleading voice, can you promise me that you won't charge in person? And Ning, you know I can't promise. A person's past experience will become the criterion for his future actions. I have personally charged several times before, and they have played a very good effect. Especially in the battle with Lafayette, my personal charge was almost a deciding factor in the outcome of the battle. Christina, then let me put it another way. Can you promise me that every charge in the future will be the deciding factor in the outcome of the battle? What I mean is, don't charge unless it's this time. And Ning thought back to the feeling of charging. In fact, it was very pleasant to charge into battle in person. When Ning played Mountain Blade 2 before, he liked to turn on the simulation of troop damage, and then turn on the damage reduction for the player himself, and then charge into battle with his physical body to experience the thrill of fighting 1 against 100, and then be shot away by the pirate's javelin. But that is also a kind of happiness, isn't it? And Ning hugged the beauty and examined himself, and suddenly found that he actually liked the feeling of charging into battle. Perhaps those fierce generals in ancient times who often charged into battle alone also fell in love with this feeling. So Ning told the truth. In fact, I still like to charge into battle in person. In this process, I can feel my life burning. Christina, don't you like the story of Horatius very much? Horatius didn't defend the bridge with the strength of 3 people just for the thrill of killing the enemy. And Ning sighed, then gently pressed Christina's head on his chest, stroked her long hair, and said softly, okay, I promise you. I'll let Fanny supervise you. Once you charge into the formation and play around, she will report to me, and Ning said with a sly smile, then I'll leave Fanny to take care of you, and take Julian as an orderly. Although it's a bit dangerous to take Julian as an orderly, it might repeat the mistakes of a certain battlefield magician. Christina was anxious, and Ning pressed her head hard to prevent her from pulling away and getting angry at her. After a while of confrontation, Christina gave up. Forget it. I'd better see which sister can charge with you, so that I can feel more at ease, and Ning, the Sunset Knights will definitely charge with me. They all joined because they admire my personal bravery and merits. They will protect me. Christina, I don't know any of the Sunset Knights. It's better to find a sister you know who is skilled in martial arts to serve as a bodyguard. You promised me that you must take her with you when you charge into the formation. And Ning raised his eyebrows, thinking what kind of plot is this? Getting a wife and giving her a maid? And Ning chose to follow his heart. Then I want a beautiful one. Christina smiled. Which of my sisters is not beautiful? Even Ms. Oliver is still charming. After all, they were once the royal guard of the King of France. And Ning, okay, if this can put your mind at ease. In fact, you don't need to worry so much. After all, it's just a defensive battle across the Marne River. Christina was silent for a few seconds, and then said softly. And Ning raised her head and found that the moonlight at this moment was very beautiful. Chapter 233 Legend of the Rhine Heroes. The next morning, Ning selected his troops to go to war. The citizens of Paris had received the news of the expedition early and flocked to the city to see them off. Looking at this scene, Ning thought of the Song of the Red Army for no reason, not the one "We Are the Flower Sea in May," but the one "Listen to the battle horn sounding the alarm." Ning couldn't help but humming softly. He saw an old woman crying and holding a young man's hand, and at this time she just sang goodbye. "Mother, don't be sad, wish us a safe journey." He also saw many young girls kissing their lovers goodbye. Looking at this scene, Ning said to Berthier beside him, "Look, Chief of Staff, our army and the people of Paris are in harmony, and the combat effectiveness of such an army is very terrible. Berthier, I still trust more insufficient training, General." Ning, "There is no way, the enemy is coming so fast, and the lack of training will be compensated by high morale." At this time, Ning suddenly saw a drummer in the marching column looking in his direction. He recognized that it was Beethoven. "Damn, asking the music master to play the drums, is there something wrong with that?" Beethoven winked at Ning, looking like he was in a good mood. Ning thought to himself, "Don't be so arrogant, be careful not to be hit by stray bullets on the battlefield. I don't want to lose a music master for nothing, I can't bear this responsibility." So he turned his head and asked Berthier, "Do you remember which unit Ludwig is from?" "Of course I remember." Berthier raised his hand and pointed to his head, "I remember all the important information." "That's good." Ning nodded. At this time, Sudan. After the earthwork work was carried out to a certain extent, the Prussian-Austrian coalition forces began to siege the fortress again. They tried to climb out of the trench in front of the fortress wall with ladders, but were shot and killed by the French army on the fortress. Napoleon looked at all this and frowned. Damn Prussians, they planned to pile up large numbers of corpses in the trenches, leading to an outbreak of plague. Napoleon's chief of staff looked suspicious. Isn't this a waste of manpower? How can they sacrifice their soldiers so easily? This is the general practice of noble lords. When Napoleon said this, he obviously forgot that he was also a noble lord. Civilians are just a number to them. No matter how many sacrifices there is no need to feel sad. As he spoke, he turned the telescope and looked at the other side of the fortress. According to the Austrians who had defected to the fortress before, this half was commanded by Archduke Karl of Austria. On the contrary, Archduke Karl here is very methodical in his command, and he doesn't waste his troops easily. His command looks like that of a real aristocrat. The chief of staff couldn't help but complain, "Real aristocrat? He is the brother of the Austrian emperor, and his title is higher than that of the Prussian commander. Napoleon, I am talking about real aristocrats, understand? The key is the word real. The commander of the Prussian army looks like a mediocre person, just a waste who has been blessed by his ancestors. Archduke Karl, on the other hand, looks like a real talent. So we should focus our main energy on the side facing Archduke Karl." As soon as he finished speaking, Napoleon saw some carts full of soil in the Austrian formation commanded by Archduke Karl. "Napoleon, carts? What is he going to do?" As soon as he finished speaking, the Austrian soldiers pushed the carts and the soil into the trench. One cart after another, and soon a tall mound of soil appeared in the trench. "Napoleon, my God, he's going to fill the trench with soil." Although the Sedan fortress was well fortified, it was not without weaknesses. One of the weaknesses of Sedan was that the trench was relatively narrow. If part of the trench was filled up, the Austrian army could directly attack the walls of the fortress. The walls of the fortress were not too high, because the walls of modern fortresses were built short and solid to prevent artillery bombardment. Such walls, with the help of trenches, could still be regarded as an impenetrable barrier. The filling of the trenches was equivalent to shortening the walls of the fortress. Napoleon was of course very clear about this, as he was an artilleryman, and artillerymen had to study military engineering in school. So he was very familiar with the structure of the fortress. "Napoleon, the barrage on the left is too thin, what is the gunner doing?" "Stop the Austrians from pouring mud and sand into the trench." After saying that, Napoleon ran on the wall and quickly arrived opposite the Austrians' filling position. He personally turned the muzzle of a cannon to aim, and then shouted to the soldiers, "Load. Hurry up, you pig." After the reloading was completed, Napoleon grabbed the torch and lit the cannon himself. With a roar, Napoleon didn't even look at the landing point. The artillery did not need to correct the shooting at this time, because it was meaningless. The landing point was random anyway. "Reload quickly." Napoleon shouted again in a hurry. Napoleon's actions at this gun position also affected the surrounding gun positions. Everyone was working hard to load and continuously throw shells at the Austrians' earthwork area. While they were fighting, Napoleon suddenly saw the Austrian flag coming over. A thin Austrian general was riding on a tall maroon horse, observing the French position with a telescope. Napoleon also handed the torch to the artilleryman next to him, and picked up the telescope again to observe the Austrian general. He saw that the general was wearing a white military uniform with a large cross medal on it that could be clearly seen from such a distance, and he was also wearing a red, white and red ribbon, which represented his royal status. Napoleon looks very thin, not like a tough guy who can fight at all. Archduke Karl also saw Napoleon in the telescope. The military uniform is very casual, short and energetic. Is this the favorite of Frost? He muttered. One of the noble officers nearby said, "It is said that he is from that remote and poor village in Corsica. Although he is not good looking, he is actually a noble. I don't know how Frost, who was born a commoner, got involved with him." Another person said contemptuously, "Maybe it was through a licking." The nobles laughed rudely, which was completely unrefined. Archduke Karl frowned slightly. The knowledgeable people in the Austrian army especially hated these useless dandies in the army. Archduke Karl was one of them, even though he was the biggest dandy. Archduke Karl ignored the teasing of those around him and looked at Napoleon carefully. This year Napoleon was 24 years old and Archduke Karl was 22 years old. Both of them were at an age when the future was more than the past. Chapter 234, Every battle begins with a duel between scout cavalry and cavalry. On the way to the Marne River, Ning received information from LaSalle. Ning unfolded the letter on horseback. LaSalle reported 3 things. First, he found the enemy's marching column in the direction of Alsace, and judging by the flags, they should be Austrian air rifle hunters. Second, LaSalle tried to attack the marching column of the air rifle hunters and take back the air rifle that Ning had been longing for. Third, LaSalle had a stomach ache and had diarrhea while riding, and even spoiled the saddle. Ning imagined the scene very vividly, and handed the letter to Berthier with a frown. "Berthier, is the situation very bad? Are there more enemies entering from the direction of Alsace than expected?" Ning, no, I frowned because LaSalle is having diarrhea. Berthier was shocked. What? Wire write this in the letter reporting military intelligence. Maybe he thinks this is also military intelligence. Ning shook his head, then put the subject back on track. Anyway, our enemies are already at the table. Now we must get to the banquet venue as soon as possible and set up preparations to welcome the guests. Berthier, at the current marching speed, we will reach the Marne River tomorrow, and there should be 1 to 2 days to build a position. Ning nodded, very good. But we should anticipate the enemy and order the troops to speed up. Forced march. Anyway, if the enemy hasn't arrived after we arrive, we have time to rest. Berthier, what if the enemy comes immediately after we arrive? Berthier, if we lose the position on the Marne River, there will be little point in conducting a field battle. These recruits will be defeated by the well-trained Prussian and Austrian coalition forces. Ning had fought against a larger force with a smaller force several times before, firstly because he had a powerful general and secondly because his troops were well trained. Now this group of new recruits were citizens of the city not long ago. Ning didn't want to use them to fight the Prussian-Austrian coalition in the field. If that happened, I'm afraid he would have to rely on Ning's own plug-in to personally charge into the enemy group and chop the enemy's morale to pieces. This is very Mountain Blade. It's not that Ning couldn't do it. With his plug-in, it should be easy for him to rush into the crowd and start a small battle. But the problem is that swords in reality are not like the magic weapons in the game. They will curl. The stainless steel swords of later generations may be able to chop melons and vegetables without deformation, but the swords of this era are not as strong as stainless steel. If that really happened, Ning might have to carry 20 or 30 swords on his back, throw away one after chopping it, and directly pull out another. Where the hell did this Jiu come from? There is also an Ajul in the Austrian army, right? He carried 22 knives to save you. Ning shook his head. It was a pity that he had traveled through time. Even if Jiangning finished writing Piao he would not be able to see it. Berthier, sir. Ning suddenly broke free from his distraction. What? What were you saying just now? I was distracted and didn't hear it. Say it again. Berthier, I'm saying that the most urgent task now is to find out who the enemy commander is. Ning, is this important? You can infer his command style based on his past record. Berthier glanced at Ning. Maybe you really don't need it. No, I need it. Once you get the name of the enemy commander, you can help me infer it. Berthier, shall I infer it? Yes, I don't know these Austrians and don't know their past records. Ning shrugged. In fact, if the Austrian army had many famous generals, he would probably know the command styles of these generals through later history books. Unfortunately, In the Austrian era of Napoleon, except for Archduke Karl, all the others were chickens. And Ning only knew the names of those who were humiliated by Napoleon. As for the past achievements, let alone, as a war history writer, would you write about the achievements of a group of chickens? Berthier looked very happy. Okay. I will do my best to support your decision-making. It seems that Berthier thinks he has got an important task. As long as he is happy. Prince Schwarzenberg was riding a horse to follow his troops and suddenly shivered. His chief of staff immediately asked with concern, "Your Highness, do you have a cold? Do you want to rest in the carriage for a while?" The prince said angrily, "Asshole, how can a general ride in a carriage when marching?" The chief of staff immediately shut up. At this time, a messenger came galloping from the front, stopped his horse in front of the prince and saluted. "Report to the prince, urgent report from the vanguard." The prince took the letter. "Let me see. French reconnaissance cavalry was found? So fast." The chief of staff said worriedly, "Are the French troops coming to us? We are not as strong as the two corps advancing head-on. If the French army swarms in." Prince Schwarzenberg snorted, "According to the intelligence we have received, the regular French troops are in Sedan and Verdun, and a group of militia gathered in Paris. No matter how many militias come, they are just militias. Chief of staff, but Frost's main force should still be in Paris. What if they go out to fight us?" "That's right, we will consume the strength of Frost's team in the confrontation, and when the main force of the coalition forces breaks through the fortress, they will face a tired and depleted army," Prince Schwarzenberg said confidently. He seemed to have not considered the possibility of dying on the battlefield, and was fully prepared to use his own troops to consume entire Frost's troops. But his chief of staff reminded him, "Your Highness, you still have the old mindset. You think that even if you are defeated, there will be no accidents. After all, your territory is vast and rich, and you can afford the ransom without blinking an eye. However, the enemy is the army of revolutionary France. Frost has chopped off countless nobles' heads." Prince Schwarzenberg was stunned, and then beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. Quick, send out cavalry to scout in the direction of the Marne River and find out the movements of the French army." The knights around LaSalle seemed to deliberately distance themselves from him. The main reason was that the saddle of the King of Light Cavalry now looked a little dark in color. LaSalle was observing the enemy column marching in the distance. Since the close watching reconnaissance in the Adige Valley, LaSalle has fallen in love with this kind of reconnaissance method that sticks to the enemy like a dogskin plaster and keeps in the enemy's field of vision. The main reason is that this method is really exciting. The enemy who is annoyed by LaSalle is likely to send cavalry to drive LaSalle away. For LaSalle, this is a good opportunity for a cavalry duel. He has broken up several enemy reconnaissance cavalry in recent days. He blocked the enemy's reconnaissance and got a tense and exciting cavalry duel. LaSalle loves this kind of work. At this time, a cavalry shouted, "Look! A new unit has appeared in the east, it's cavalry." LaSalle immediately turned the telescope. "Let me see. Look at the flag. It's the 51st Hussar Regiment. Very good, brothers, there is another battle. Let these Austrian bastards know who is the strongest Hussar on the European continent." As soon as the voice fell, a Hussar teased, "We don't know who is the strongest, but now everyone knows who is the stinkiest." LaSalle, shut up. Bugler, blow the bugle. Follow me. Chapter 235, Heroes on the Marne River. LaSalle's cavalry quickly formed an offensive wall formation. As the name suggests, a brigade of cavalry formed a moving wall and rushed towards the enemy at lightning speed. The use of this formation to attack the enemy will bring great pressure to the enemy, and it is very likely to break the enemy's morale before directly contacting the enemy. Of course, the faster the speed of the attack, the greater the power. The higher speed will make the horses start to compete with the surrounding horses because of their instincts, producing the effect of horses driving horses. Horses in this state will also ignore more potential dangers. This is similar to people. If people have fallen into a state of excitement and madness, they will ignore many dangers, burst out with a fierce force, and behave more boldly than usual. In the clash between cavalry and cavalry, the courage of horses is a very important factor. Before people get scared, horses will get scared first. After all, horses are not like humans. They are animals that act according to instinct. Once they get scared, they will stop attacking and flee in all directions. The clash of cavalry often ends with one side's horses fleeing in all directions. The cavalry that can really charge together and fight for 300 rounds must use horses that have been carefully trained. As one of the best cavalry commanders, LaSalle is of course well aware of this. He will not bet his chances of winning on the fact that his own horses are more elite than the enemy, but will do his best to increase the speed of the charge. The faster you charge, the greater your chances of winning. It's that simple. LaSalle raised his saber high, shouted Alleluia, and led the troops across the vast fields. Don't slow down. Charge. Break the enemy's horse's neck. In between shouts, he loudly encouraged his subordinates. The two sides have approached within 10 meters. At this moment, the enemy's formation collapsed. Instinct dominated the enemy's horses, causing them to break free from the riders, disband the formation and flee. LaSalle shouted excitedly, "Great! We won! Catch up!" An enemy horse in front of LaSalle was in a panic and stepped into a rabbit hole in the field. It stumbled forward and fell to the ground, throwing the rider on the horse's back to the ground. LaSalle pulled the reins of the horse, allowing his horse to jump lightly and jump over the fallen enemy. At this time, LaSalle's troops disbanded the formation. After all, wall-style charge is not very useful when chasing. The hussars were like a scattered lion group, freely chasing the fleeing enemy. LaSalle rushed to the side of an enemy lieutenant colonel, and while shouting to protect his home, he chopped at the lieutenant colonel's neck. "I am LaSalle. General Frost asked me to take care of you." The lieutenant colonel turned around to block. When each cavalryman chops, the most suitable direction is the direction of his dominant hand. Similarly, it is more convenient to block attacks in this direction. If the enemy attacks from the direction of his dominant hand, he can only turn around to block. As the attacker, LaSalle could freely choose the position of attack. He was the enemy approaching from the left. The lieutenant colonel's blocking action was extremely awkward. He barely blocked the first attack, and the second attack was knocked away by LaSalle's saber. "Go to hell!" LaSalle shouted. "Lieutenant Colonel, I surrender. I surrender." LaSalle could no longer hold back, so he could only force his hand up, letting the trajectory of the knife draw a diagonal line in the air, directly cutting off the lieutenant colonel's hair. The lieutenant colonel's half-head was bald in an instant. LaSalle closed the distance, backhanded a punch, knocked the lieutenant colonel off his horse, and then continued to chase the fleeing enemy. After a full half an hour, he led the troops who had just surrendered to turn back and look for the lieutenant colonel who had just surrendered. At this time, the main infantry force of the Prussian-Austrian coalition had approached, and the coalition forces at the front had switched from marching columns to square formations. LaSalle threw the still unconscious lieutenant colonel onto the saddle, and then called out to his troops, "The wind is strong, hurry up." At this time, Beethoven and his comrades were building fortifications on the Marne River. In theory, military musicians do not need to participate in the construction of fortifications, but Beethoven, as a person who often follows a Ning, naturally rolled up his sleeves and worked with his comrades. When others asked him, he said, General Frost would definitely join everyone in the same situation. After working for a long time, Beethoven's platoon finally built a low wall and could take a break. As soon as he sat down, the platoon leader, the sergeant, asked, "Are you the musician next to General Frost?" Beethoven nodded, "Yes, that musician." "Sergeant, oh my God, what's going on?" "The musicians in our platoon are the general's musicians, and the musicians in the next platoon are in the theater or something, the ones that make a humming sound." "Beethoven, are you talking about a cello?" "Oh yes, that's it. Normally, we don't even see each other, and at most we talk about your names and romantic affairs when we brag in the tavern. But now, we are repairing fortifications here together. The world has really changed." Beethoven nodded, "Yes, the general said that we just have different divisions of labor, there is no distinction between high and low." "Sergeant, did the general really say that?" "Yes, and he did so. You know, the general eats the same meals as you do, except on the day of the war." "Oh, I heard that the general will have a drink on that day, and drink it with the side of the enemy being defeated." Another strong man joined the conversation. At this time, there were already several people around Beethoven and the sergeant. Someone asked Beethoven curiously, "Is the general very tall?" "I heard that he is 3 times taller than an ordinary person, a burly giant." Yes, I heard that too. The general can even hold up the cannon and fire it like we hold a gun. During the war, the artillerymen are responsible for loading, and after loading, they let the general fire." Beethoven didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Are you talking about the general or Hercules? The big-headed soldiers were all stunned. What the hell is the sea? Beethoven, Hercules, the Hercules in Greek mythology, helped Prometheus and stole the golden fleece with Jason. The soldiers all showed admiration. After all, Beethoven told a new and strange story that they had never heard in the tavern. The sergeant praised, "You are indeed a cultured person, you only talk about things we don't know." Another soldier asked curiously, You have an accent in French, aren't you French?" Beethoven, "Yes, I am German." The French soldiers looked at each other, and a sergeant asked, "Then why are you with us? Our enemies are Prussia and Austria, they are all Germans, aren't they?" Beethoven was stunned for a moment. He had never thought about this question. After all, at this time, nationalism was still a new thing, not everyone would have it. France was the source of the Enlightenment and had experienced the Great Revolution, so even the most basic soldiers had a sense of nationality and a sense of belonging to their motherland. For Beethoven, a German, such an idea had not yet formed. What's more, Germany is now in a scattered state. Austria or Prussia are just vassal states on that land and cannot represent the entire German nation. Beethoven thought about this question seriously and fell into contemplation. The French soldiers looked at each other. "What's wrong? Did we say something bad? I told you to stop talking." At this time, Beethoven suddenly woke up from his meditation. He waved his hands and said, "I'm fine. It's okay. I just suddenly had a new feeling. By the way, everyone is resting now. How about I play some music for you?" "Okay, okay." Everyone nodded. Although they are all rough, Paris is the cultural center of Europe. There are often musicians playing music on the streets, so even rough people have a certain perception of music. Beethoven took out a flute and smiled. "This flute is a portable instrument recommended to me by General Frost. He said that this thing is easy to carry and the tone is beautiful. And he also said that this is his favorite instrument." After speaking, Beethoven put the flute close to his mouth, and the melodious melody floated into the sky. The soldiers fell silent. The music played by Beethoven was his improvisation, without any score at all. Of course, even if he is a music saint, it is impossible to create a masterpiece all at once. This melody is just a patchwork of some basic melodies. But everyone was still listening very attentively. Suddenly, the sergeant platoon leader said, "Great, if I die in the next battle, I hope you can play a song for me at my grave." The others nodded, "Me too. Play a song for me too." Beethoven nodded solemnly, "If I am still alive at that time, I will. Don't die easily." Chapter 236 The enemy is in big trouble. Ning waited for more than a day on the banks of the Marne River, and the enemy arrived as expected. Although the French army had marched desperately to get to the river as quickly as possible, they had recovered after a day of rest. In addition, the French army was the defensive side in this battle, and they only needed to squat behind the built fortifications and fire their guns, so the physical consumption of the soldiers was not a big problem. Ning put down the telescope, picked up the champagne on the table, and took a sip. In fact, he didn't want to be so exaggerated, but for some reason, the whole army now believed that General Frost should drink champagne and eat delicious steak when he went to war, otherwise there would be a problem. So even Berthier, who is always rigid, came to suggest that Ning should honestly set up a table to drink and eat meat to prevent everyone from guessing. So Ning asked Fanny to set up a table on the high ground on the banks of the Marne River, with a parasol, red wine and steak. He strongly suspected that he would have to dress like this in the future. As soon as the enemy appeared, the cannons began to roar. However, after just a few shots, the enemy retreated out of range and began to camp on the other side of the Marne River. Berthier commented, "Instead of rushing to cross the river, they set up camp first and waited for the troops to recover. The enemy's actions are very consistent with military common sense. This Prince Schwarzenberg is at least a commander with common sense." Ning asked, "Then according to military common sense, when will the enemy attack us?" Berthier, "Tomorrow, generally speaking, before a regular battle, the two armies will first set up camp very close to each other, and they can even see each other's camps. Yes, it's like this now. Many battles commanded by Your Excellency the General did not follow this principle, so you gained a lot of advantages. I think this is probably because our army has high morale and does not need time to reorganize after a long march. This is a significant feature of our army, which is different from the army of the Old Kingdom. Ning, it should be said that this is the characteristic of a citizen army, a characteristic of a nationalist army. Berthier, but this feature can't help us now. After all, we can't cross the river to attack the enemy now. We can only wait until the enemy is ready before attacking. And Ning was about to respond when a messenger arrived. Report, General LaSalle is crossing the Marne River upstream and should arrive tomorrow. And Ning calmly corrected the messenger's words, he's not a general yet. Sorry. And Ning nodded and waved the messenger to leave. Berthier asked, do you want to let LaSalle attack the enemy camp at night? And Ning, it's too late. When the messenger arrives at LaSalle, it will probably be late at night. Now the strength of our army and the enemy is evenly matched, so we just need to fight in a regular manner. Berthier, I'm still worried. After all, our army is an untrained unit, and many troops haven't even mastered reloading. And Ning, but our morale is high. In real history, when the French army first faced the intervention army, it was in a very poorly trained state. Not only that, the French army in real history was a mixture of the old army and the self-defense army, with a lot of internal contradictions. The army in Ning's hands, at least, did not have many remnants of the old army, and was a complete unit. Moreover, in real history, the French army defeated the intervention army in Valmy, and basically had no geographical advantages. It just relied on high morale and solid preset positions to make the coalition forces unable to move. The French army did not attack either, because Dumouriez, who commanded the battle, knew that the French army with such poor training would be finished if it left its position to fight in the field, so it stayed in its position and fought a stupid battle with the intervention army. Then the French army won. Ning is extremely familiar with history, so he prepared to do the same. High morale means you can do whatever you want. He stood up from the table and said to Fanny, we may not be able to fight today, you clean up. Is there any way to guarantee that the steak will not go bad? Fanny, yes, just add more salt to marinate it. But are you sure you want to eat such a salty steak tomorrow? You should eat the steak today, and I will give you a new steak tomorrow. And Ning raised her eyebrows and could only sit down again and start eating steak. Fanny, have some wine too. Won't you get tired of eating only steak? And Ning picked up the glass and took a big sip of champagne. Berthier, I suggest that only half of the troops be left on the battlefield, and the rest of the troops should withdraw to the camp to rest. And Ning, okay, you go and arrange it. Berthier nodded and left. A moment later, the French troops on the battlefield began to withdraw from the battlefield and enter the tents behind the battlefield. Quite a lot of troops passed by Ning, all watching Ning eating steak. Someone who was curious asked loudly, General, the enemy did not attack today. Are you not happy with your meal? And Ning smiled and responded, yes. These damn guys just made a tentative attack and then retreated. Their commander Schwarzenberg must be a useless idiot. The soldiers burst into laughter, all making fun of the useless people on the opposite side. For a while, the air was filled with joy. After the troops had passed, Fanny whispered, it turns out that this steak is not to your taste. No, it's very much to my taste. I just did it to suit the occasion, just to suit the occasion. And Ning said hurriedly. Fanny tilted her head, oh, so, I thought you liked to eat steak that was a little rarer or a little more cooked. As she spoke, Fanny looked up at the tents that the coalition forces were gradually building on the other side of the river, and asked, will the battle last for many days? I'm afraid it will. After all, we are not the attacking side this time. We have to fight until the enemy completely loses the will to fight. It is unlikely to form the kind of hearty annihilation battle that was before, where the winner would be decided in one day. Is that so? I thought this time it would be another quick victory, and my preparations were a little insufficient. Please allow me to take a carriage back to Paris to bring some necessary things over. And Ning was shocked. What, you actually have to use a carriage to bring things from Paris? I thought you could take out anything you needed from under your maid skirt. After all, the skirts of perfect and chic maids are all four-dimensional treasure bags, whether it is a large number of throwing knives or DSHK heavy machine guns, they can be easily moved out. Fanny looked at Ning with a foolish expression, how is it possible? I am just better at planning and using transportation capacity. Every time I will ask the baggage team to transport the general's personal supplies. What the hell, after all this time, these champagnes and steaks are all things that occupy the resources of the transportation team. And Ning pulled a face, this is not good, I can't occupy precious supplies just because of me. Fanny, really? Then I won't do it next time. And Ning couldn't help but hold his forehead, he remembered Berthier's words, If you don't drink champagne and eat steak in front of the battlefield, morale may be shaken. Ning, no, please continue to prepare. Fanny, oh. But I have to return to Paris in the afternoon and I probably won't be back tomorrow. You can only move the small table out by yourself, and then pour the wine yourself. The next day, early in the morning, the Austrians began to bombard across the river. So the emergency assembly calls were heard everywhere in the French camp. Ning lifted the curtain of the tent, carrying a table in her right hand and a bottle of champagne in her left hand, and just came out. Berthier had come out of his tent to report to Ning, but when he saw Ning like this, he hesitated. Ning, Fanny went back to Paris, I have to move it myself. Berthier opened his mouth wide, and it took him a long time to react. Oh, so that's it. You can call a few messengers. Ning, no need, this thing is not heavy, I can carry it myself. Then Ning walked towards his command position. The flag bearer who was holding the general's flag had arrived early, and when he saw Ning coming up like this, he was stunned, as if he didn't know whether he should come up and lend a hand. After all, no one had ever seen a commander-in-chief of an army in this outfit. The infantry brigades deployed on both sides of Ning's command position all looked at Ning in shock. Ning smiled awkwardly, the maid has gone back to the city. I have no choice but to do it myself. Then, under the gaze of everyone, Ning set up the table, turned down the chairs on the table, and set them up. He sat on the chair, opened the champagne himself, and then found that he didn't bring a glass. Well, with only 2 hands, there was really no space to bring a glass. Ning thought about it, forget it, just drink directly from the bottle. The soldiers who saw this scene looked at each other, and then Ning heard someone say, see, the general is in such a good mood today, the enemy is in big trouble. Ning raised his eyebrows. What the hell, can I boost the morale of my army no matter what I do? As he was thinking, the French artillery began to fight back against the coalition forces. Then Ning saw that the coalition engineers in the distance pushed the pontoon bridge into the water. My goodness, they were not idle at all after setting up camp yesterday. They were building a pontoon bridge. There was a typhoon here, and I urgently bought some daily necessities. After all, the typhoon landed in the afternoon, and who knows if anything serious will happen. The second update is made up, it will be at the same time in the evening. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237, Frost's Golden Spearmen Show Their Power. The coalition forces began to attack. The commander of the coalition forces, Prince Schwarzenberg, stood on the high ground by the river, observing the situation on the other side of the river with a telescope. Then he saw Frost's small table. It is rumored that Frost would eat steak and drink champagne in front of the battlefield. I didn't expect it to be true. Schwarzenberg curled his lips. How arrogant, no respect for his opponent at all. The chief of staff curled his lips. Maybe he just trusts his subordinates very much? He thinks he can win without making any commands? I heard that his chief of staff, Berthier, is a veteran who has fought in the 7 Years' War and has been to North America to participate in the Colonial War of Independence. Maybe it is the chief of staff who has been commanding the battlefield all the time. Prince Schwarzenberg curled his lips. At this time, a lieutenant colonel suddenly ran over and reported to the prince, "Report, we have captured a surrendered French nobleman." Schwarzenberg was overjoyed. Really? Bring him up immediately. A moment later, the noble in civilian clothes was brought up. The prince looked at him with some disdain and couldn't help asking, "Where are your wig and trousers? Where are your stockings and high heels?" In this era, wigs, trousers, stockings and high heels were common attire for nobles, male nobles. But the noble in front of him had none of them, and was wearing the same trousers as the trouser men, with mud spots on his trousers, which were dirty. The noble replied, "If I wear that kind of clothing, I can't even leave Paris. The mob is arresting people dressed like old-fashioned nobles and sending us to the guillotine without trial. Your Highness, please go to Paris as soon as possible to restore the orthodox order." The prince looked at the French army on the other side of the river and did not answer directly, but asked a question, "How did you run across the enemy's line?" "I came from Paris. I didn't go to the other side of the Marne River, but walked all the way from the north bank of the river. If you want, You can also go this way and go straight to Paris. Prince Schwarzenberg turned his head to look at the chief of staff. Is this feasible? No, there is no road to transport supplies for us. A single person riding a horse can come from a small road, and the large army must take a route that can maintain supplies. That's right, in this era, large troops must move along the road, a bit like the game Nobunaga's Ambition, New Life. The troops are bound by the road network and cannot freely decide where to go. So Schwarzenberg must cross the river here, and then he can go straight to Paris along the road. As for water transportation, the upper reaches of the Marne River are not suitable for navigation. It is only from the lower reaches near Paris that it becomes suitable for navigation. It is through the Marne River that the French transport champagne produced in Epernay and a small amount of grapes suitable for direct consumption to Paris. Schwarzenberg told this to the nobleman, who was confused. Ah, is that so? Schwarzenberg frowned. Most of the nobles should have received military education, right? At least they should have received some military enlightenment, don't you know this? The French noble was speechless for a moment. Schwarzenberg muttered, no wonder they were overthrown, without hiding his contempt. At this moment, the French noble suddenly remembered something and said to Schwarzenberg hurriedly, oh, I have another key piece of information. Frost did not bring his direct troops, but placed the troops he brought from the south around Paris as some kind of general reserve. The troops under his command are all temporarily recruited trousers guys. These troops have hardly received any decent training. They are considered soldiers just by stuffing them with guns and uniforms. Your Highness will definitely be able to easily defeat such a mob. Schwarzenberg's chief of staff smiled and said, this is good news. The prince nodded, yes, indeed. So is the pontoon bridge ready? The chief of staff immediately replied, it's ready. The engineers have been busy all night. I have also selected soldiers who can swim and formed a commando team to let them push the pontoon bridge forward in the water. Schwarzenberg nodded, order the troops to start the action. Once the commando has built the pontoon bridge, the entire army will attack. Before that, bombard the enemy's position fiercely. And Ning watched the enemy troops carrying pontoon bridges rushing into the water and began to build a bridge over the Marne River. So he asked Berthier, is there any way to stop them from building a pontoon bridge? Berthier, the river is too wide. If the smoothbore rifles can hit the other side, it depends on luck. And Ning, I remember that our breech-loading rifles can achieve relatively effective hits at a distance of only 200 meters. Berthier immediately replied, yes, we can try it. And Ning, pass on my order, the sniper company will be dispatched in a skirmish formation to snipe the enemy who is building a bridge on the river bank. Berthier immediately turned around and conveyed the order. Soon, the sniper company left their original position, formed a skirmish formation and advanced towards the river bank. Prince Schwarzenberg saw the movement of the sniper company, and he asked the surrendered nobles next to him in confusion, why are the guns carried by that group of skirmishers all golden? The noble replied, oh, that's Frost's civilian general guard, called the Sharpshooter Company. Their guns are all made of gold. It's said that this bastard Frost melted the church's golden cross and made it. Schwarzenberg frowned, oh my god, he actually did such a blasphemous thing. Yes, he is the devil sent by Satan, and he has bewitched those ignorant trousers guys. Schwarzenberg, but why did he send this troop to the river now? Rifles can't shoot at such a long distance, and gold can't increase the range of rifles. As soon as the voice fell, the Golden Gun troop opened fire. When the first round of volleys came, several engineers who were building the bridge fell down. Schwarzenberg snorted, huh, these blasphemous guys actually got fooled. But the Golden Gun unit began to fire intensively, and engineers kept falling down. Schwarzenberg was shocked, how can they fire so fast? And with such good accuracy? Can a gun made of gold have such an effect? The people around looked at each other, and no one could answer the prince's doubts. They just watched that company fire fierce firepower like an infantry brigade, constantly sending the engineers who were building the bridge in and out of the sky. Schwarzenberg, what's going on? How could something so contrary to common sense happen? What the hell is that unit? The chief of staff was also confused, looking at the firing rate and accuracy. It's a bit like our air rifle hunters, but when air rifle hunters fire, there won't be so much smoke, and there won't be such loud gunshots. The sound of air rifle hunters firing is like farting. The French nobles who were still nearby shouted, it's the devil's sorcery. Schwarzenberg said to his entourage impatiently, send this idiot. I mean, Ask this gentleman to go down, give him good wine and food, and let him have a good rest." The orderly immediately came to the French nobleman. "Sir, please come this way." After the French left, the chief of staff asked Schwarzenberg, "What should we do? At this point, should we stop building the bridge?" "No. We can't stop. How can we cross the river if the bridge is not built? Let the engineers and commandos go up under the enemy's firepower. Then transfer the artillery over, put it on the river bank, and bombard the enemy on the other side of the river." The chief of staff, "But the enemy is in a skirmish formation, and the effect of the bombardment may not be too good. Moreover, the enemy is still by the water, and the shells will not bounce when they hit the river, which invisibly increases the difficulty of hitting the enemy." Schwarzenberg, "I don't care. As long as one shell kills Frost's precious golden spearman, it will be a profit. Let the artillery hit hard." Chapter 238. From today on, this will be my famous saying. And Ning has also been paying attention to the performance of the shooter company. He excitedly said to the people around him, "Look! Such killing efficiency at such a long distance. If we can widely equip this thing and get prefabricated ammunition, the form of war will change." And Ning said excitedly and turned his head to look to the side, but he only saw Berthier's serious face. He curled his lips and remembered that the person who could share his joy was not around now. Berthier has always been very sensible and would not be happy with him like a buddy. It can be said that the chief of staff has always kept the distance very well and always maintained a respectful attitude. There is nothing wrong with this attitude, but it is indeed a bit boring. And Ning filled himself up again, while continuing to admire the accurate shooter company he had high hopes for to kill the coalition engineers, while thinking about how to improve the breech-loading gun in the future. First of all, the primer and prefabricated ammunition should be developed. Unfortunately, Ning studied computer science, and his understanding of chemistry was limited to the comprehensive level of the college entrance examination. It is unrealistic to rub the primer by hand. But Ning knew who to let do the job. Mr. Pingdeng was now his future father-in-law, and Mr. Pingdeng's followers were roughly equal to his followers. Mr. Pingdeng funded the great chemist Lavoisier. In real history, Lavoisier was involved in politics and the taxation issues in Paris, and was eventually sent to the guillotine. And Ning remembered that this happened in 1794 in real history, which was 1 year away. It was still in time to save Lavoisier. While he was thinking about this, Berthier suddenly shouted, "General!" And Ning suddenly woke up from his distraction and returned to the battlefield. Then he saw the coalition soldiers holding the bridge planks of the floating bridge, using the planks and pontoons as shields, and forcibly rushing to the river bank. "Let the sharpshooter company retreat," and Ning ordered loudly. However, it was too late. The first wave of coalition troops rushed to the shore and rushed towards the sharpshooters with bayonets. The sharpshooters were in a scattered formation at this time, with a considerable distance between each person, which meant that when facing the enemy's attack on a part of the formation, the enemy might form a local advantage of more people against fewer people. Soon several shooters were knocked down, and the copper-plated breech-loading rifles were also taken away. Seeing this, the self-defense soldiers guarding a little behind the sharpshooters immediately climbed over the low wall and attacked the small group of enemies crossing the river in a dense formation. Several enemies were stabbed to death immediately, and several of the guns that were taken away were recaptured. However, there were still a few coalition soldiers who ran very fast and rushed back into the water with the golden rifles. The national self-defense soldiers who rushed to the river immediately opened fire in the water. However, at this moment, a solid bullet hit the beach in front of them, but because it was a beach, it did not bounce up, but became a real rolling ball in the literal sense. The rolling shells broke the legs of several people at once. The tragic wailing sound could be heard even from Ning's position. And Ning frowned and was about to say something when Berthier suggested, "We should have the soldiers throw the floating bridge components that have been pushed to the shore into the river." "Okay, you go and give the order." And Ning nodded. Prince Schwarzenberg looked at the guns that the death squad had just brought back from the river. "Breech loading? No wonder it can shoot so fast," he said as he held the gun upright and looked inside from the muzzle. "There are actually rifling. How do they solve the problem of incompletely burned gunpowder residue blocking the rifling?" Schwarzenberg said as he handed the gun to the chief of staff. The chief of staff fiddled with the mechanical structure of the breech. "It looks like the locking is okay, but I can't see how they deal with the problem of the rifling absorbing gunpowder residue." Schwarzenberg, "This kind of weapon, after firing for a while, You have to flush the inside with water or something to wash the gunpowder residue out of the narrow rifling. In my opinion, this is a weapon that is far from the actual combat stage. That cobbler actually used this kind of thing. Okay, that's enough discussion on Frost's new gun. Schwarzenberg turned to the soldier who ran back with a gun. You swam over, how about it? Can your feet reach the bottom of the river? The soldier nodded and replied, yes, the river is not very deep. Except for the people in the middle row, most people should be able to cross the river by walking. Nowadays, the infantry attack formation generally adopts 3 rows in a horizontal column. The arrangement rule of this formation is that the tallest person is in the first row, the second tallest person is in the third row, and the second row in the middle is mainly composed of short people. As for why it is arranged like this, it is mainly because the Prussian infantry drill manual stipulates so. After the defeat in the 7 Years' War, all parties involved in the war basically imitated the Prussian regulations and copied them one by one. In this process, the French did not dare to change the Prussian regulations at all, for fear that if they changed a word, the regulations would become ineffective and unable to burst out the might of the era of Frederick the Great. The Austrians were not much better, so the Austrian army was also sandwiched between short people and tall people like a sandwich. The Prussian tradition was copied in its entirety, and no one even asked, why do we have to use this sandwich model? Even if someone wants to ask now, Frederick the Great, who presided over the formulation of the regulations, has passed away. Unless there is really a psychic, it is impossible to get an answer. Schwarzenberg ordered the chief of staff, take the tallest first row of troops as the vanguard, go down to the river immediately, and cross the river to attack the mob on the opposite side. He paused, and added, under the cover of the assault troops, the engineers should quickly complete the assumption of the pontoon bridge. And Ning saw the coalition forces start to go down to the river. Damn, is it the assault just now that let the commander on the opposite side know that the river is not very deep? And Ning muttered. The upper reaches of the Marne River are not suitable for navigation. The water is shallow and the current is fast. Theoretically, as long as a shallower location can be found, there is a certain chance of success in forcing the river. Obviously, the assault launched by the enemy against the precision shooters just now made Prince Schwarzenberg convinced that he had found the shallows he needed. So he attacked without hesitation. And Ning looked at the soldiers on the opposite bank who began to attack like dumplings, and said to Berthier, convey my order to the entire army. The real test is coming. Although France is big, we have no way to retreat. Behind us is Paris. Berthier, France may be big, but we have no way to retreat. You are really a genius in public speaking and boosting morale. No, that is not my original work, I copied it. Never mind, I have already copied it. From today on, this will be my famous saying. Chapter 239 The musician lost his hearing. Beethoven watched the enemy begin to attack on all fronts, and he quietly increased the beat of his drums. This should urge his comrades to shoot faster. Beethoven glanced at his comrades next to him, and was satisfied to find that they didn't notice the faster beat at all, but were focused on loading, and their movements were also driven by the music to become faster. Because of the emergency, Frost issued an order more than a month ago that the newly recruited National Self-Defense Force soldiers would not practice formation at all, but only practice shooting and loading. Now this order has worked, and the soldiers have formed basic muscle movements for loading, so they didn't notice that Beethoven quietly increased the code. Because of the continuous shooting, Beethoven can hardly see the scene on the riverbank in front of him, and the whole field of vision is full of white smoke. In this case, the soldiers can continue to shoot because they have made reference objects on the fortifications in advance when they built them. As long as the soldiers raise their guns according to this reference, they can ensure that the barrels are probably facing the enemies on the shore. Then the rest can be left to probability. Beethoven continued to play the drums while observing everyone's situation. He quietly increased the speed of the drums a little bit, and then something went wrong. He saw a soldier forget to pull out the cleaning rod after compacting the paper ball that was blocking the mouth. The soldier raised the gun with the cleaning rod still inserted in the barrel and fired. As a result, the cleaning rod flew out of the barrel, drew a very small parabola, and disappeared into the darkness. Beethoven wanted to apologize to the soldier who lost the cleaning rod. It was because he increased the speed of the happy song casually that he made a mistake in a hurry. Then he watched this careless person start a new round of loading. The first step of loading is to pull out the cleaning rod from the bracket under the gun, and then use the cleaning rod to clean the muzzle first, deal with the incompletely burned gunpowder, etc., to prevent the bullet from getting stuck during loading. And this careless person fumbled under his barrel for a long time before he found that his cleaning rod was missing. While the careless person was looking for the cleaning rod, Beethoven did not stop playing the drums. So Mataho became even more anxious, and then he quickly took out someone else's cleaning rod and started to complete his own loading steps. The man whose cleaning rod was taken away was also confused. He hit Mataho's shoulder and asked, "Where's your cleaning rod?" Mataho spread his hands and said, "I don't know. It disappeared in an instant. It was fine just now. Anyway, lend me your cleaning rod." "Then what should I use?" The man whose cleaning rod was taken away said unhappily, and then he raised his hand and took back his cleaning rod in a flash. Now the Mataha is left, holding the rifle without a cleaning rod and standing there in a daze. The bad news is that he is now on the battlefield, and taking away his cleaning rod is equivalent to making his gun useless. The good news is that it is now in the free shooting stage, and the French army is in short supply of officers, so no one will take care of the soldier who lost the cleaning rod for the time being. Mataho was still looking for the cleaning rod in vain. Beethoven couldn't bear to see it, so he whispered to remind him, "You just shot out your cleaning rod with a bullet, and it flew a little bit in front of the fortifications." Mataha immediately looked forward, and then saw his cleaning rod on the ground with his sharp eyes, or something in the shape of a cleaning rod. He immediately turned over and crossed a bunker. The company officer noticed this guy and shouted at the top of his voice, "Where are you going? Come back. Come back behind the bunker. There are stray bullets everywhere. It's dangerous to run around now." When the officer said this, Mataho bent down with satisfaction, picked up his lost cleaning rod, and straightened up with satisfaction. At this moment, an enemy shell flew over and hit the waist of the unlucky guy with the cleaning rod. In an instant, the poor man was broken in the waist, and his spine and other things were all broken at once, leaving only some skin and nerves on the left side. The bloody scene that suddenly appeared in front of him shocked Beethoven. At this time, he realized very clearly that he was now on a battlefield where he was in danger of death. Beethoven suddenly wanted to vomit, probably because the scene just now was too exciting. In order not to affect his drumming, Beethoven forced the vomit that came to his mouth to swallow back. Because of swallowing the vomit again, Beethoven's mouth was full of the taste of bitter bile and stomach acid, as if he had a mouthful of swill in his mouth. He couldn't help but feel lucky that he was a drummer, not a flute player. The shooting continued. Suddenly, a shell hit the wooden fence in front of Beethoven's platoon. The flying sawdust injured many people at once. Beethoven suddenly felt his head buzzing, and then severe tinnitus engulfed his ears. He could hardly hear the sound of his own drums. It was clearly the sound of his own hands beating, but it sounded like it came from hundreds of meters away. Beethoven had an ominous premonition. Could he be deaf? The cruelest punishment for a musician is to deprive him of his hearing. Beethoven was overwhelmed by a strong sense of uneasiness. He wanted to escape from the battlefield immediately and go to a doctor to check his ears. But he overcame this impulse and continued to play military music with his physical skills. And Ning did not know that Beethoven, who did not have ear problems in this time and space, had just lost his hearing. He was observing the battlefield, ready to lead his guards to counterattack at any time. His elite forces were all in Paris, and now the only well-trained guards in the entire army were in Ning's own guards. Putting the guards in at a critical moment would have a decisive effect. However, a better choice soon appeared in front of Ning. And Ning suddenly heard someone shouting, "Look! It's Colonel Lassalle." He immediately turned around and saw Lassalle's cavalry brigade coming along the river from upstream. He immediately tore off a piece of notepaper and wrote an order by hand. "Lassalle, I order you to charge along the river beach and sweep away the enemy who is forcing a crossing of the river." After writing, he shouted, "Order! Come!" to Lassalle. The messenger saluted and ran away immediately. A moment later, Lassalle's troops turned around and began to advance along the riverbank. The horses' hooves stirred up a lot of water on the riverbank. From a distance, Lassalle's cavalry brigade seemed to be walking on the waves. Then Lassalle's distinctive shout came, "Alléluia!" It was similar to the shout of the conquering King Iskander in Fate Zero when he launched the king's army. The cavalry from the side rushed into the enemies who had just crossed the river. The raised sabers reflected the sun's light. The blood of the fallen coalition soldiers dyed the Marne River red. The enemies who forced the river across were defeated. Those who were walking behind turned around and waded to the other side, and many of those who were walking in front knelt down and surrendered directly. Some of them missed their feet, slipped into the water, and were washed away by the current. The first day of attack and defense on the Marne River was a victory for the French army. Chapter 240, Strangling Fate. At about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, both sides withdrew their troops. And Ning always felt that fighting like this was a bit like going out to work and firing cannons every day, and then returning to the camp after work. This was a new experience for Ning. In the past, he would go out to fight and defeat the enemy directly, and then capture prisoners all over the mountains and plains. How many more days will it take? Ning asked Berthier. Berthier looked up at the coalition camp on the other side of the river and replied, judging from the enemy's troop consumption today, if the enemy does not get replenished, they will retreat in about 3 days. Ning, 3 days. Can't we just defeat the enemy? Berthier, why, are you planning a night attack again? Ning actually hadn't thought about a night attack, but when Berthier mentioned it, he remembered, yes, a night attack could be carried out. He turned his head to look at Berthier and smiled slightly. You understand me? Berthier raised his eyebrows. After all, your night attack 2 years ago set off a series of chain reactions. Looking back now, Lafayette probably wouldn't have lost so badly without that night attack. But if we want to launch a night attack on the coalition forces now, we must first overcome the Marne River in front of us. As he spoke, Berthier looked at the Marne River that stretched before him. Ning, can we consider going around? Do you mean going around from the ferry upstream? That's too far. Our night attack troops have to set out in the afternoon. Considering that we can't go along the river yet, we will be discovered by the reconnaissance cavalry on the other side, so we may have to advance the departure time. Ning nodded. I'll think about it. Now I want to inspect the troops and boost morale. I'll leave the other chores to you. Berthier, understood. After that, Ning waved and called his stable boy Julien, jumped on his big white horse and left. Berthier muttered, just say it directly if you want to confirm the situation of your acquaintances. Ning knew where Beethoven's troops were deployed. Berthier had made arrangements, and this unit should not be directly attacked by the enemy. In theory, the music saint should have played soy sauce all day today, and only killed and injured some enemy soldiers when the enemy sent people to build a pontoon bridge. Ning rode a horse and trotted on the river bank, and the troops he met along the way shouted long live. Ning could only raise one hand and wave to the soldiers. He felt that he was getting more and more adept at this kind of leadership thing. When he arrived at Beethoven's unit, there was another round of cheers as usual. Ning waited until the cheers subsided and asked anxiously, where's the third row? The sergeant who was being questioned immediately pointed to the tent not far ahead. Ning turned over and dismounted and walked towards the tent. The soldiers who were watching formed a circle around him, leaving the circle closest to him empty. Ning had to say to the soldiers, disband and have a rest. We are not tired, General. A soldier immediately answered loudly. But I am a little tired of you. Ning couldn't tell the truth, so he could only say, disband and rest immediately. This is an order. You still have a battle to fight tomorrow. As soon as the voice fell, the non-commissioned officers in the team shouted, okay, you have heard your excellency's order, disband, disband. Go back to the tents, eat when it's time, and brag and chat when it's time. The soldiers reluctantly dispersed and walked towards their own tents. Ning curled his lips. His current reputation is a bit scary. Recalling the history of the French Revolution that he was familiar with, only one person had a similar reputation during the French Revolution. Yes, that guy named Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was enjoying dinner in the fortress, and suddenly yawned and blew out all the candles on the table. Napoleon, damn, it must be the commander of the opposite coalition who is scolding me. Ning came to Beethoven's tent and saw Beethoven sitting next to the campfire in front of the tent from a distance. When he walked in, he found that Beethoven had a bandage on his head. What's wrong? Is he injured? He asked. However, Beethoven didn't move at all and continued to stare at the fire in a daze. Ning frowned. Ludwig, what's wrong with you? At this time, the sergeant next to him spoke. He was deafened by the cannon. He has to be very loud to hear. Ning was shocked. What the hell? Then he remembered that the real Beethoven in history was half deaf, so there was the famous saying I will strangle fate by the throat, which means that he continued to be a musician even though he was deaf. Beethoven in this time and space has completely normal hearing, and Ning had forgotten about it. The sergeant continued to say with pity, it's pitiful, he is still a musician, but he is so deaf. Ning waved his hand, signaling the sergeant not to continue. Then he sat down next to Beethoven and took out a notepad and a pencil. Beethoven only realized Ning was here at this time, and was about to stand up, but Ning held him down and asked him to continue sitting. Then Ning wrote on the note, "Ludwig, don't let fate mock you, strangle fate by the throat and conquer it." Beethoven looked at the paper with a solemn expression. Ning tore off the note and handed it to Beethoven, then wrote on a new piece of paper, "Now, I look forward to your music even more, because the music created after conquering fate must be extraordinary." He tore off the new note and handed it to Beethoven, then stood up and said to Beethoven, "Be quiet by yourself, wait for this battle to end, I will wait for your return." He deliberately raised his voice very high to ensure that Beethoven could hear. Beethoven nodded gently, and then answered in a loud voice, "I will, sir." After that, Beethoven folded the two notes very preciously and put them in his pocket. Ning nodded and turned to leave. He was not worried that Beethoven would become depressed from then on. After arriving in this time and space, the celebrities from the past history that Ning met, no matter how young they were, would behave in accordance with their performance in the past history. Li Sheng should also be able to overcome this hurdle and strangle fate. So there is no need to worry about him. Now Ning only needs to consider how to defeat the enemy in front of him. Night attack. Today the enemy tried to attack by swimming, and it seems that they did not swim over, but walk directly from the bottom of the river. Then the night attack troops should be able to walk directly over. The remaining question is how to avoid the enemy sentinels. Make some noise on the riverbank to attract the attention of the sentinels. For example, let the troops sing loudly at night. Ning pondered these while walking. At this time, the night had completely fallen, and the entire Marne River was dark. Dotted campfires could be seen on the opposite bank. Suddenly, a sentry shouted, "Look, is there a fire over there?" Ning immediately woke up from his meditation and looked up at the other side of the river. A corner of the enemy's campfire on the opposite bank ignited a flame that shot up to the sky. Ning, what the hell? Chapter 241 What is People's War? Time went back to an hour ago. Prince Schwarzenberg, who had just withdrawn his troops and returned to the camp, was in a very bad mood. Today's attack has made no progress at all, he said angrily. The chief of staff immediately comforted him. The enemy hid in the fortifications and fired like a coward, so their biggest disadvantage, the lack of training of the troops, was avoided. This is not because our army is incompetent, but because the enemy is too cunning. Prince Schwarzenberg repeated what the chief of staff had just said, cunning, cunning. If Frost heard this, he would laugh out loud, because he would definitely think of a certain colonel. But Frost was not here. Schwarzenberg, let the troops eat and sleep well today, and we will launch a more determined attack tomorrow. At this time, a messenger entered the tent and reported loudly, "Your Highness, a group of French people followed the supply train." Prince Schwarzenberg, what? French people, who asked them to come? The messenger, well, come out and see for yourself. The prince frowned, pushed the messenger away, lifted the curtain and walked out of the tent, and then saw a group of gorgeous French women getting off the car. What's going on? He asked loudly. Immediately, a Frenchman dressed as an aristocrat came forward and bowed respectfully, "General, we are here to reward the soldiers who fought to restore France." The prince looked at him puzzledly, "Who are you?" "I'm Pierre de Heinrich. You can tell from my name that I'm a noble. The revolution destroyed everything I had, and I had to hide my identity to escape. In order to support the coalition forces in restoring French orthodoxy, I paid out of my own pocket, invited these girls, and prepared fine wine for you." Prince Schwarzenberg turned his head and looked at the long convoy. "Is this all wine?" "Yes, I bought out all the wineries in the city. This is champagne produced in Epernay. It's a good thing. It was originally going to be shipped to Paris by ship to make it cheaper for those peasants." Schwarzenberg was still thinking about it, and a beautiful French girl came up and said coquettishly, "General, you have been fighting for a whole day, let the soldiers have a good rest." The prince himself was well informed and kept his composure, but the chief of staff behind him could not hold back. "Your Highness, a proper relaxation will help restore morale and offset the impact of today's failure." The prince thought about it, finally nodded, and said to the Frenchman, "Let the prostitutes and wine you brought please our soldiers." The Frenchman took off his hat and nodded, "Leave it to me, I will definitely restore the morale of the coalition to its best state." The Prussian-Austrian coalition was an old army, and there was no such thing as nationalism to maintain morale. As for the possibility that these civilians had ill intentions, The prince did not think in this direction at all. Because nationalism is a new thing, it did not exist in Europe before. The prince's experience is that no matter which country is fighting, civilians always have an attitude of "I don't care." For the prince, it is normal for the army to fight to the death, but civilians do not care to work and help the enemy. Because civilians have no sense of honor and no loyalty. The prince did not know that in France, times have changed. An hour later, the entire coalition camp was filled with laughter. As night fell, the coalition soldiers were immersed in the fine wine and the tenderness of French women. At this moment, Pierre d'Heinrich quietly slipped to the side of the wine transport cart he brought, climbed up and gently knocked on the outer shell of the wine barrel. He knocked very regularly, first knocking twice in a row, and then knocking alone. Then the lid of the wine barrel was pushed open by itself, revealing a pair of eyes, looking at the French noble vigilantly. "It's done, come out quickly, and move." So the person in the wine barrel opened the lid, got out of the wine barrel directly, and blew 2 whistles at the wine cart parked in the coalition camp. The next moment, the lids of the wine barrels were opened one by one, and strong men got out of the wine barrels, each holding a weapon in his hand. At this moment, the coalition sentry who came to patrol found something unusual and asked loudly in German, "Who is it?" As soon as the voice fell, several strong men rushed towards him, first gagged him, then pressed him to the ground and strangled his neck, causing him to quickly faint. The first person to come out ordered, "Take the torches. Quick." So one by one, the empty barrels were opened, the torches inside were taken out, and then lit with the torches of the coalition forces. Soon, dozens of Frenchmen all took up the shining torches. "We only light fires, not kill people. For France." Everyone whispered, "For France." Then they turned around and ran in all directions. Back to the present, and Ning looked across the river at the fire burning in the enemy camp. And the fire points are still increasing. The French soldiers also all poured out of the tents, looking at the growing flames on the opposite side in confusion. Someone speculated, "Is the enemy going to retreat and burn the tents?" Someone immediately retorted, "The tents will not be burned at night. It is normal to burn them tomorrow morning after a night's sleep. Is the enemy going to retreat overnight?" And Ning thought to himself, "Yes, even ordinary soldiers know that it is unreasonable to burn the tents at this time. In any case, go back to the headquarters first, maybe Berthier knows what happened." So Ning quickly found his horse, jumped on it and ran towards the headquarters. Halfway through the run, he met 2 messengers who asked loudly, "Is that you, General?" And Ning, "Yes, it's me. What's going on? Did Berthier send you?" "Yes, the Chief of Staff asked us to find you and bring you back to the headquarters." "Does the Chief of Staff know what happened on the other side?" "I don't know, he still wants to ask you what's going on." "I don't know, I'm just known as the magician on the battlefield, not a real magician. I can't use magic to set the enemy's camp on fire across the river." And Ning was too lazy to complain and galloped towards the headquarters. When he arrived at the headquarters, he saw LaSalle standing in front of the headquarters tent and walking back and forth, so he asked, "LaSalle, do you know what's going on the other side?" "I don't know. But, is it possible that the people set fire to the Austrians' camp?" And Ning, "The people?" "Yes, when I was wandering around in the enemy-occupied area, the people were extremely supportive of me. There were supplies and places to stay wherever I went. Many people wanted to go with us. So I think it's not too strange that they took action and set fire to the Austrians' tents." And Ning raised his eyebrows and suddenly felt that this was possible. After all, and Ning had seen the People's War. At this time, Berthier heard a voice coming out, and the Chief of Staff looked at Ning with a serious face. "Did you do something? Why didn't you notify me in advance?" And Ning, "No, it really wasn't me. But we can't miss this opportunity. Organize a death squad and cross the river to see what's going on." Chapter 242, The Vast Ocean. The French army that had just returned to the camp was called out by the messenger who was galloping on horseback. To ensure the smooth flow of command under such circumstances, it actually depends a lot on the ability of the Chief of Staff. A Chief of Staff with slightly less ability would have the troops in chaos before crossing the river. But Berthier may be the strongest Chief of Staff in Europe during the entire French Revolution. He was able to break down the action of crossing the river at night into countless detailed orders in one go, and then let the messenger implement the orders. In addition to the messenger who called people out of the tent at the beginning, Berthier also sent out many messengers to deliver specific instructions to each unit. The troops that received the order began to move to the river. The crossing point chosen by Berthier is the location where the coalition forces cross the river today. The coalition forces have used actual actions to prove that the river water in these areas is shallow and can be waded across the river. Berthier also arranged for a shouter to shout at the riverside, "Throw down the backpacks, hold the guns and gunpowder bags above your head." The guns and bullets of this era were not waterproof. Not to mention soaking in the river for a period of time, even if it rained, they would become ineffective. So to swim across, you have to hold the rifle, the ammunition backpack, and the horn guard filled with gunpowder high. The backpack was full of paper bags that held the projectiles and propellant together. When loading, just tear a hole in the paper bag, and you can pour the propellant and projectiles into the barrel together. The horn guard is mainly used to hold the gunpowder to be poured into the ignition pool. These two are things that must not get wet. So a large number of French soldiers held rifles, ammunition bags, and horn guards and went into the water in a mighty manner. Because it was dark, the scene still looked a little creepy, as if the zombie army had learned some new tricks. Especially the fire on the opposite bank, which turned half of the sky red, made the scene look even more weird. And Ning watched this scene by the river. He wanted to be the first to cross the river, but Berthier tried his best to stop him, thinking that the commander should not be put in danger at this time. If it was only Berthier who stopped him, and Ning might have ignored him and crossed the river to kill people, but Fanny also came back from Paris. The maid's words made Ning give up crossing the river by himself. She said, "Madame asked me to keep an eye on you and not let you take risks casually." So Ning had to give up and watched his French troops crossing the river on the river bank. As Ning was looking at it, he suddenly remembered something and asked Berthier, "Will night blindness hinder us after we cross the river? When we attacked Lafayette at night a few years ago, I feared the night attack troops carrots a few days in advance to solve the problem of night blindness." Berthier replied helplessly, "Night blindness does not mean that you can't see at night, but that you can't see when there is no light. It's impossible not to see with such a big fire on the opposite side. If you are really afraid of not being able to see, just pick up some burning firewood as torches." And Ning, "Is that so? I don't know because I have never had night blindness." After he crossed over, except for the first few days when he didn't eat well, he ate well at other times. After all, he was a guest of the Duke of Orleans. So he didn't experience the taste of night blindness. But logically speaking, there is no reason why a cobbler in this era should not have suffered from night blindness. Night blindness is a common disease among civilians in this era. And Ning didn't notice this and said it casually. But Berthier obviously noticed this, but he didn't say anything, but had an unfathomable expression on his face. I don't know how many tens of thousands of words of hidden secrets he has imagined. At this time, the first wave of swimming troops had crossed the river, and shouts of killing came from the other side of the river. And Ning, "Can I cross the river now? Once the engineering corps has built a pontoon bridge, you can go across." Berthier replied. "And Ning, you also asked the engineers to build a pontoon bridge. Of course, we can't let all the troops swim like this, right? Although we can hold guns and ammunition above our heads, there are still chances of accidents. And not everyone can swim. The troops I ordered to cross the river are all from coastal areas, and they are less afraid of water." And Ning said with a convinced tone, "You are worthy of being my chief of staff, you are so thoughtful." What he actually wanted to say was, "You are worthy of being the strongest chief of staff in Europe," but after thinking about it, he still didn't give Berthier this compliment. As they were talking, a messenger came running and reported loudly, "General, the pontoon bridge is ready." And Ning, "Is that it? I saw it." As he was talking, torches were moving towards the center of the Marne River. It was obviously a pontoon bridge. And Ning, "Let's go." Without waiting for Berthier's reaction, he kicked the horse's belly, making the horse trot and run straight to the pontoon bridge outlined by the torches in the night. Berthier followed immediately. When the engineer officer guarding the pontoon bridge saw Ning coming, he shouted loudly, "Long live the general!" And Ning nodded and rode his horse onto the pontoon bridge. The iron sheet on the horseshoe hit the pontoon bridge, making a crisp sound. Engineers holding torches stood at a distance on the pontoon bridge, lighting up the bridge surface. Every time Ning passed a soldier, he would shout, "Long live the general!" After crossing the river, Ning observed the camp of the Prussian-Austrian coalition army from a close distance. The fire is really fierce. Order the troops to capture the enemy leader, Prince Schwarzenberg, and reward him with 20 gold crowns. Berthier, it's unlikely. The prince should have escaped in the chaos. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of French soldiers came over with a man dressed as an aristocrat. General, this noble wants to see you. The escorting soldier shouted, staring at the man dressed as an aristocrat with a vigilant look. It's no wonder that the soldiers were so alert. Now the nobles are basically enemies. Even the nobles who were not hostile to the revolution have become opponents of the revolution because of the Jacobins' massacre of the nobles in recent months. The noble immediately shouted, I am not a noble. This is a disguise I prepared to deceive the coalition forces. I am a barber. This wig is sold in my shop. When Ning heard the word barber, he thought of the hardcore ruthless man John Fatto that John Khan had talked about. Yes, he was the ruthless man who staged a fake kidnapping in order to avoid being extradited to the UK. And Ning suppressed the sudden surge of memories before the time travel, and asked the barber in front of him, did you light this fire? No, it should be said that my companions and I lit it. We are patriots from Epernay. And Ning, you are real heroes. Without your fire, we might have to spend many days here fighting the coalition forces. The barber was overjoyed. You actually praised us as real heroes. To be praised by a hero like you, all our actions are worth it. I will tell my colleagues about your praise. And Ning, go, bring good news to everyone for me. After the barber left excitedly, and Ning said to Berthier, see, this is the cohesion of the nation-state, something that those European nobles have never seen. They think they are only enemies of the National Assembly in Paris, but in fact, the whole of France is their enemy. They will be trapped in the vast ocean of people's war. Chapter 243 The glory of victory belongs to His Excellency the General. Beethoven's troops crossed the river later. He vaguely knew that the troops were singing when they crossed the pontoon bridge, but the singing seemed to come from a long way away, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't hear it clearly. For a moment, the depressed mood was about to swallow him up again. But Frost's encouragement was like a guiding light, dispelling all the haze. What an inspiring word to strangle the throat of fate. Beethoven silently strengthened his determination and beat the drums harder. Although he couldn't hear the sound of his own drums, he could guess the general melody through the soldiers singing, and then adjust the drum beats to echo the beat of the melody. The long pontoon bridge came to the end, and Beethoven stepped onto the land on the other side, and then he saw a group of people riding horses from a distance, standing by the river. Although it was dark, Beethoven couldn't see the face of the rider, but he guessed that it was probably General Frost. His mood suddenly became high. The general won another victory. Sure enough, he is the symbol of victory, the contemporary Caesar. He will definitely bring changes to France. No, he will bring changes to the whole of Europe. In this high-spirited mood, a melody suddenly emerged in Beethoven's mind. This is a melody of praise, without a doubt. At this moment, Beethoven decided the name of this new song that has not yet been born, Heroic Symphony. This is a tribute to the heroes of all Europe. And Ning suddenly sneezed. Berthier immediately became alert. Sir? Why don't you go back to the tent? It's not good to catch a cold. And Ning, no, I bet it's an Austrian who is scolding me. It may be Prince Schwarzenberg. After saying that, he laughed. When he laughed, all the staff officers, including Berthier, laughed. Amid laughter, Lassalle galloped over on horseback and saluted Ning. I asked my boys to add fuel to the fire for the Austrians. We set fire to the coalition camps on the river bank. Now the enemy is running away. And Ning, you did a good job. But it's too dark at night, and the cavalry is prone to loss. Let's wait until dawn to chase and annihilate the enemy. When the cavalry move at night, the horses are prone to tripping over things. Once they trip, the horse may be useless. Now the whole of France is short of horses, because most of the people who raised horses in the past were nobles. Now the nobles have been killed or run away. There are few proper horse farms in France that are operating normally. So now the cavalry units in the hands of the Republic are all non-renewable consumables. If they are lost, they are gone. This kind of horse shortage situation has also occurred in the original history. It was precisely because of the lack of cavalry that the Republican army had to use a large number of skirmishers to perform reconnaissance tasks that should have been performed by the cavalry. Therefore, the tradition of the French army in the Great Revolution to use skirmishers is also related to the lack of horses. It turns out that in history, the shortage of horses did not improve until 1796. As for the history here, and Ning did not know when there would be enough horses. In short, It is right to use the cavalry carefully. LaSalle was a little dissatisfied with Ning's order. Sir, now is the time to capture prisoners and make achievements. Are you asking my boys to let go of the merit that is about to be obtained? And Ning, yes, that's what I mean. In order to get merit, breaking the horse's leg is not worth the loss. Now we are very short of horses. LaSalle sighed. Okay, I will go and give orders to my boys to give the merit to the infantry brothers. After speaking, LaSalle turned his horse's head and rode away. Berthier, only you can order him. And Ning, when I'm not around, you should order him. Your rank is higher than his and your position in the chain of command is higher than his. You can't change your position in the chain of command just because of your personal relationship with me. Berthier, then I'm afraid you have to remind him. And Ning, I will remind him. When it was almost dawn, the chaos that lasted all night finally came to an end. Berthier reported to Ning about the results of last night's battle. Our army completely defeated the Austrian Fourth Army last night. The commander of the enemy army was Prince Schwarzenberg. No one knows the whereabouts of the prince at present. Our army captured a total of 17,000 Austrian soldiers, including about 800 officers. And Ning, there are a little few officers. Berthier, most of the senior officers have horses, and they should have run away. We didn't count the non-commissioned officers and the like according to the officers. And Ning, I understand. Then do you still plan to deal with these prisoners in the original way? Berthier frowned and looked at Ning in confusion. In this era, once the enemy was captured, they would generally be released right away. That's why there was a situation in history where Napoleon won so many battles, but when he turned around, the enemies grew out of the ground again. Berthier, what do you mean? And Ning, we need a lot of labor to build the fortress, and the sewers in Paris should also be renovated. Let these prisoners do corvée labor. Berthier, this has never been done before. I'm afraid it will give European countries an excuse. Then let them capture them. Let them exaggerate that the Republic is an evil country and that I am a damn tyrant. In short, these prisoners cannot be released easily. We cannot let them turn around and continue to be our enemies. And Ning paused and continued, and the captured officers, many of whom are nobles, will be handed over to the People's Court established by the Parliament to punish them. We must thoroughly weaken the power of the anti-French alliance from the source. Berthier asked doubtfully, anti-French alliance? There is no such thing in this era. The alliance formed by Prussia, Austria and the Kingdom of Sardinia is not called the anti-French alliance. And Ning, yes, the anti-French alliance. Prussia, Austria and the Kingdom of Sardinia have formed a de facto alliance against us. I call them the anti-French alliance. Because of our progress and revolution, the reactionary forces in the whole of Europe have united. Don't have any illusions about them. And Ning paused, then said firmly, so, we must weaken the enemy from the root, so these prisoners will all be sent to Paris, and let them dig the sewers of Paris under the supervision of bayonets. And these captured officers, the most suitable place for them is the guillotine. One day in March 1793, the city of Paris was full of joy. Today, the people of the city all poured out of their homes to watch the great gift presented by General Frost to the whole city, a full 17,000 Austrian prisoners. The citizens of Paris were delighted to see the gift sent by the general and praise his reputation. If the musicians and bards in the city had not joined the army and become military musicians, they would definitely have composed a few songs to praise the general. It was from this day that the people of Paris firmly believed that General Frost would completely destroy the coalition forces invading France and bring the glory of victory to the Republic. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244, The Power of a Great Victory. That morning, Marat excitedly knocked on Robespierre's door. Robespierre's landlord opened the door for him. After seeing Robespierre, Marat's first words were, "Isn't it time for you to get a house of your own? You always live in a rented place. You are the Speaker of the National Assembly. It is reasonable for you to have your own house. There are so many people in Paris who want to give you a house. In addition, there are so many properties of dead nobles waiting to be distributed. You can just take whichever one you like." Robespierre waved his hand. "I have never been interested in personal enjoyment, and the landlord's wife is a good cook. I like her very much. In this era, landlords have to provide meals, 2 meals a day, and the meal money is included in the rent. Mara, after you have your own house, you can hire a maid to cook for you. Let's not talk about this. Frost 1. Is that so? There was a quarrel outside just now because of this. Robespierre raised his eyebrows. Very good, now those people in Paris who pin their hopes on foreign forces should be restrained. Marat, are you still talking about this? We should take advantage of the great victory to further clean up the traitors in Paris. We must strike hard at those termites. Robespierre looked as if he wanted to say something but stopped. In fact, Robespierre was considered a moderate in the Jacobins. It turned out that in history, he felt a real threat after Marat was assassinated, and he was determined to use terrorist means to clean up all enemies. As a result, he became the so-called Great Terrorist Devil. Marat was not dead at this time, so Robespierre was naturally still the moderate. The moderate Robespierre looked at Marat, sorted out his words, and then said, Frost has won, and those speculators will temporarily restrain their little thoughts. They have always been like this. If we continue to take radical actions at this time, it may force them to oppose the Republic. Marat interrupted Robespierre, Maximilien. As long as they still have second thoughts, they will always rebel, either today or tomorrow. We must take advantage of the support of all the people in Paris to thoroughly purge these bastards. Don't waste Frost's victory. Robespierre, what I mean is, anyway, we have Frost as our biggest backer, and his military victory will make everyone shut up, so we don't need to. Absolutely necessary. Before Frost's return, weren't we tired of the performances of the monsters in Paris? These bastards are all enemies of the people of Paris. It's time to eliminate them all. I'll go back and write an article and publish it in tomorrow's Friends of the People, calling on everyone to take advantage of Frost's victory to stand up and report the enemies of the people. Robespierre smacked his lips. Okay, if you want to do this, I really don't have much reason to stop you. After all, it's a good thing to clean up some enemies. Marat, that's right. Of course, I understand your concerns. You are afraid that many people who are not prepared to oppose us will also be forced to oppose us. Don't worry. If these people oppose, we will send them to the guillotine together. We are worried that the purge of potential enemies is not thorough enough. So, have we reached an agreement on this matter? Robespierre nodded. Yes, we have reached an agreement. Are you going to Danton next? Danton and Saint just hold the same opinion as me, for sure. Marat turned and went to the door excitedly. Then I won't disturb your breakfast time, I still have to write articles. Robespierre, okay, see you later. After Marat left, Robespierre shook his head. This Marat is like a gust of wind. Among the 4 giants of the Jacobin Club, Marat was the most vigorous. He kept writing articles in the Friends of the People with great energy, criticizing all those who opposed the National Assembly. Moreover, he had to attend the National Assembly as an observer every day. I don't know where he got so much energy. Robespierre continued to eat his breakfast, which was interrupted by Marat, and muttered while eating, Frost won again. Although I thought he would win, I didn't expect it to come so soon. In fact, the Jacobins, including Robespierre, knew that as Frost's reputation grew, a de facto military dictatorship would definitely be formed in France. When the Girondists were still there, they had criticized the Jacobins many times for this. Now that the Jacobins are in power, Frost, as the biggest of the 4 Jacobin giants, no one can stop him from establishing a de facto military dictatorship. Robespierre was very conflicted at this time. As a loyal believer in the Enlightenment, he did not support such a military dictatorship. He believed more in the separation of powers, freedom and equality. A de facto first citizen was contrary to this. But as a close friend of Frost, Robespierre was sincerely happy for his friend's brilliant achievements. In this way, the incorruptible had breakfast with mixed feelings, thinking about what to do. In the next few days, the Jacobins attacked on all fronts. With Frost's victory, the Jacobins sent many tough characters who were originally untouchable to the guillotine. Marat's Friends of the People newspaper exposed various public enemies every day and clamored for a thorough liquidation. For a time, everyone in Paris was in danger, because according to the standards given by the Friends of the People, most of the leading figures in Paris were likely to be liquidated. But because Frost had won a victory outside, and now Paris had gathered hundreds of thousands of National Guards waiting to be incorporated, no one dared to go against the Jacobins. Those National Guards waiting to be incorporated worshipped Frost as an idol. If you dare to say a bad word about the general, just wait to be paraded on the bayonets by the big-headed soldiers. In fact, Some people have been sent to the guillotine for disrespecting General Frost. For example, a small nobleman, who had avoided countless disasters after the revolution by changing his course with the wind, could not avoid it this time because someone reported that he had once called Frost a cobbler together with the nobles killed by Frost in a duel. The jury of the Court of Inquiry unanimously believed that this was a great disrespect to the revolutionary hero, and sent the little nobleman to the guillotine with a green light. Paris seemed to have fallen into madness these days. Some people even joked that more blood was shed on the guillotine in Paris than on the front line. Frost knew nothing about this. After he commanded his troops to win the Battle of the Marne, he found that his troops suffered little damage, so he started the next battle without stopping. A new term was passed back to Paris from Frost's headquarters, called People's War. Then Marat interpreted this term as launching a national war against traitors and took it as evidence that General Frost supported the expansion of the purge. Time passed day by day, and finally it was time for Marat, the friend of the people, to bid farewell. Chapter 245, Death of Marat. Marat's apartment had changed several times. In fact, someone had already offered Marat the house of a recently executed nobleman, along with the servants. But Marat refused. It wasn't because he was a germaphobe and didn't want to live comfortably, but mainly because Robespierre, the Speaker of the Parliament, still lived in the shabby apartment he rented at the beginning. The incorruptible was still as frugal as he was at the beginning of the revolution, living in a shabby apartment and wearing that old green coat. Marat had tried many times to get him to change that old coat but failed. Frost, the leader of the four Jacobins, was a soldier. He usually lived in a military camp and wore a military uniform. Although he had recently moved his military camp to the luxurious Palace of Versailles, his reason was very reasonable. The only place with enough space and rooms to accommodate so many troops was the Palace of Versailles, which had been vacant for several years. With Frost and Robespierre as examples, the other Jacobins couldn't live too comfortably. However, Marat still improved his living conditions, such as getting himself a large bathtub. With the technological level of that era, such a large bathtub was not cheap, and ordinary trouser-wearing civilians could not afford it. Every day Marat would take a comfortable hot bath and enjoy the beauty of life. This day was no exception. Marat soaked in the hot water and picked up the documents on the chair next to the bathtub. Yes, even in such a moment of enjoying life, the friends of the people had to continue working. At this time, the voice of the landlady came from downstairs. Mr. Marat, a lady is going to report the remnants of the Girondists in the Seine area to you. Marat, another free man who came to report? Let her in. Oh no, I'm taking a bath now, it may not be convenient to see her, let her wait for a while. As soon as the voice fell, Marat heard someone shouting downstairs, you can't go up, miss. It was the guard assigned to Marat by Frost. For some reason, Frost always felt that Marat was in danger, so he personally assigned trusted soldiers to serve as his guards. But Marat didn't like the soldiers sent by Frost. He felt that these people had nothing to praise except blindly worshipping Frost. They couldn't even understand how great Frost's work was. So Marat said sternly, if the lady doesn't mind that I'm taking a shower, let her come up. I'm a friend of the people. I won't refuse people's visits just because of my personal inconvenience. The soldier's voice downstairs fell silent, and a lady's voice replaced it. Did you hear that? Mr. Marat asked me to go up to see him. Then there were heavy footsteps, and the lady went upstairs and pushed open the door to the second floor. Marat looked at the door. A beautiful lady in a blue striped dress came in. The moment he saw her, Marat's expression softened. It seems that the Girondins are really unpopular. They actually made you, such an elegant and beautiful lady, meet me in such an indecent situation in order to report them. The lady nodded. Yes, I hate them very much. My name is Charlotte de Corday, from Almont in Normandy. Marat, you are still a noble lady. In this situation, it is best not to say the de in your name. The de in the French name is generally a symbol of the noble title. Of course, some great nobles don't care about this title, so they will omit it for the sake of saving trouble. But now, the nobles are eager to hide the fact that they were once nobles, bury it underground, and never let others know. Charlotte de Corday nodded. Thank you for your advice. Are you here to report the remnants of the Girondists? Marat went straight to the point. Do you have a list of names? Corday nodded. Yes, I did. Here it is. She took out a list from the secret pocket of her clothes and handed it to Marat. Marat put the document aside, took the list and unfolded it while saying, I hope you can forgive the rudeness of the soldiers downstairs. That guard was not my intention. My friend Frost insisted on sending a guard to me. He seemed to be very worried about me. Really, it was totally unnecessary. Corday responded absent-mindedly, well, it's okay. The guard just stopped me from coming up and didn't do anything rude. That's good. Let me see the people you reported. My God, there are 18. You have made a great contribution to the revolution. Today, France has 18 fewer enemies. A trial must be arranged immediately, and then they must be sent to the guillotine. Corday asked, that's it? Just because I reported it, because I gave a list of names, they are determined to be guilty? Shouldn't there be more evidence? Marat nodded, you are right. Under normal circumstances, more evidence is needed, but now is an extraordinary period. Every Girondist is a traitor. As long as they are Girondists, resolute action must be taken. Haven't they done enough bad things? Look at what they have ruined our country into. If it weren't for them, how could things become so bad? After that, Marat picked up the pen on the stool beside the bathtub and wrote a note on the list given by Corday. These Girondist remnants must be sent to the guillotine immediately. Corday looked at all this and seemed to have finally made up her mind. She took out a knife from her bosom. Marat's attention was all on the list, and he didn't see the cold light of the knife at all. While signing his name, he said to Corday, Madam, don't worry, these traitors will get the punishment they deserve. They won't lie for a few days. Damn it, it's you. Corday shouted and stabbed the knife into Marat's chest. Marat looked at Corday in astonishment. Corday let go of her hand, stepped back, leaned against the wall of the room, and gasped for air. Marat looked down at the knife stuck in his chest, and then squeezed out a sentence from his throat, no wonder Frost always wants to give me bodyguards. Then his hand holding the pen slid down and drooped on the edge of the bathtub, and the feather pen in his hand slipped to the ground. Corday looked into Marat's lifeless eyes and tried to calm her breathing. Forgive me, she said, I agree with the ideals of the Republic, but I think everything is too much now. I'm sorry. Really, I'm sorry. Corday covered her face with her hands and sobbed. At this time, the guards who noticed the unusual noise inside began to knock on the door desperately. Mr. Marat. Mr. Marat, how are you? There was a loud noise just now. Mr. Marat. Corday did not move, quietly waiting for her fate to come. Chapter 246, The Fanatic Paris and the Chameleon's Instinct of Avoiding Harm. That morning, Robespierre was presiding over the National Assembly. Suddenly, a tall and thin citizen wearing a liberty cap rushed into the meeting hall and shouted, Marat was assassinated. Robespierre sternly rebuked, don't spread rumors, who are you? I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, but I didn't spread rumors. I live next door to Mr. Marat. I saw with my own eyes that the guards sent by General Frost to Mr. Marat ran to the city defense headquarters to report the situation like they had lost their souls. Danton stood up and said, come to think of it, Marat did not come to observe the parliament. Robespierre, calm down, Danton. Marat has guards sent by Frost, so let's wait for the official report from the city defense headquarters. They will definitely report such a big thing. As soon as the voice fell, the door was opened again, and the Minister of War Lazare Carnot came in. Carnot had a serious face. After his eyes swept over Danton and Robespierre in turn, he said, according to the news we just received, the friend of the people, revolutionary Jean-Paul Marat has just been assassinated. The murderer is a lady. As soon as he finished speaking, Talleyrand stood up and asked loudly, what, it was a lady? So our friend of the people died of a love debt. Talleyrand's words immediately caused a lot of discussion. Because Marat was ugly, his death from a love debt would definitely become a Parisian weird talk. Someone whispered, love debt? That Marat. It's quite fun. Robespierre knocked on the table hard, quiet. Be quiet. I believe in my friend's noble character, he will not die from a love debt. There must be some misunderstanding. Lazare Carnot nodded, Marat has made many enemies, and General Frost has long been worried about his personal safety, so he sent him guards. According to the guards, this lady claimed to have reported the remnants of the Girondists to Marat. Marat allowed her into the room without any suspicion. He was taking a bath when the assassination took place. Carnot's words caused another uproar, he was taking a bath. And you still say it's not a love affair. Robespierre, quiet. So Carnot, are you sure he can't be saved? Yes, he's no longer breathing. I'm afraid the best doctors can't do anything. We caught the assassin, and she stayed at the scene and didn't run away. Robespierre, then bring her to the parliament immediately. We're going to try her. Robespierre looked extremely angry, his entire face flushed. The incorruptible had never been so angry in a meeting. Lazare Carnot nodded, then winked at the soldier behind him. Then a woman in a blue and white striped dress was brought into the parliament's meeting room. When the woman walked in, there was another round of discussion. She is so beautiful. Marat is so lucky. Robespierre slammed the table to interrupt the whispers, then he stared at the woman and asked, "What's your name? Who ordered you to assassinate Marat?" The woman raised her head. "My name is Charlotte de Corday, from Normandy. No one ordered me, but I felt that Mr. Marat's radical measures were a bit too much, so I used this method to persuade him." Someone in the parliamentary seats immediately muttered, "Corday? Is she the daughter of Lord Corday in Normandy?" Robespierre heard it clearly, and immediately pointed at Charlotte Corday's face and asked, "Are you an old aristocrat?" Corday raised her head. "Yes. But I am also a Republican. I have always been a loyal reader of the Friends of the People, but too much blood has been shed recently, and many innocent people have been sent to the guillotine." Robespierre slammed the gavel and interrupted Corday. "No. In my opinion, we haven't killed enough people now. There are still fish like you who have escaped the net and are lingering. We must take more resolute measures to clean you all." Robespierre looked around the entire meeting and advocated loudly, "Blood debts must be paid with blood, starting with Miss Corday, and all the enemies of the Republic hidden in the crowd will be caught. Their only destination is the guillotine." Robespierre had always been cautious and restrained before, and because of this, the effect of his anger now was many times stronger than that of ordinary people. For a time, no one in the entire meeting dared to refute him, and even Bishop Talleyrand, who had always been at ease, tightly shut his mouth. "Robespierre, now, let's vote. Ms. Corday's end is the guillotine." Robespierre was not the only one who was angry. When the Parisian people learned that Marat, the friend of the people, was assassinated, they expressed their attitudes with actions. In front of Marat's apartment, there were piles of flowers sent by people from all walks of life. The murderer Charlotte Corday was sentenced to death by the Parliament that day and was taken to the Place de la Révolution, where the largest guillotine in Paris stood. On the way to the execution ground, there were huge crowds of people watching, and everyone spat at her in the prison van. There were also children throwing feces at Corday, and a ball of feces hit her chest directly. The crowd shouted angrily, "Execute her!" When the prison van arrived at the Place de la Révolution, the whole square was crowded with people, and tricolor flags and red liberty caps were everywhere. According to the general procedure, the death row prisoner can make a short speech before his neck is put into the guillotine. This step is to highlight the principle of fairness. After the Great Revolution, even criminals have the right to express their opinions. Facing the angry crowd, Corday shouted, "I do this to stop the madness. You are all crazy." However, the crowd retorted with an even louder voice, "She is talking nonsense. We will not listen to the slander of the enemies of the Republic. Shut her mouth." The executioner stepped forward and forcibly dragged Corday, who was about to speak, to the guillotine, pressed her body down, and stuck her neck into the slot of the machine. The band began to play music. In the last moment of her life, Corday shouted, "I curse you. Curse all the sins in the name of freedom." The executioner turned on the switch of the guillotine, the knife fell from the sky, and Corday's head rolled into the basket already soaked in blood. The people in the audience cheered. Talleyrand was in the stands, looking at the fanatical crowd, shaking his head slightly, and said to Fouché beside him, "It's over. I feel that Paris will fall into complete frenzy. Do you want to hide somewhere else first?" Fouché nodded. "I thought so too, so I plan to go back to my hometown Lyon." Talleyrand raised his eyebrows. "Lyon, say hello to General Frost's old father for me." Fouché looked at Talleyrand. "Aren't you leaving, Your Excellency the Bishop? People like you and me with a poor background." "No, even people with a clean background cannot guarantee that they can rest easy in Paris in the future." Talleyrand smiled. "I'm going to London to carry out a diplomatic mission." Fouché laughed. "Ha ha ha, you are worthy of it." Chapter 247 Chain Reaction. As for Ning, because the Marne River was won too easily, he was ready to pursue the victory and fight a few more big battles outside. Then the news of Marat's death came. After receiving the news of Marat's death, Ning was silent for a long time. Berthier heard him muttering softly, "I clearly sent guards to him, how could he?" "Berthier, should we deal with the guards' dereliction of duty seriously?" Ning shook his head. "No, This is probably fate. Berthier, fate. Don't worry about it. Ning waved his hand, then turned to Jacques-Louis David, who had been with the army. You rush back to Paris immediately. I want you to paint Marat's death in an oil painting, and paint him like a saint. Then hang this poster all over Paris. David nodded. I will return to Paris immediately. After that, Jacques put away the things in his hands, turned around and left the headquarters. Berthier carefully observed Ning's expression and suggested, why don't you go back to Paris? It's still early for the next battle. It may be unlikely that the enemy and us will come into contact within half a month. It's just right for you to go back to Paris to attend Mr. Marat's funeral. Ning looked at the map. The enemies from Alsace have been defeated. The two groups of enemies in front are gathered around the two fortresses of Sedan and Verdun. Even if these two groups of enemies want to rush over, it will be too late. There is indeed enough time for Ning to return to Paris to attend Marat's funeral. After a brief hesitation, Ning nodded, okay, when I go back to attend the funeral, the troops will be handed over to you. You must keep the pressure on the enemy so that they can't use all their strength to attack the city. Berthier, leave it to me. Also, find Beethoven for me. I need him to conduct the band at the funeral. Ning said again. Of course, I will inform Sergeant Beethoven right away. Since Beethoven joined the army, he naturally has a military rank. This sergeant rank is already the highest rank that a military musician can have. Ning sighed. I'm a little tired suddenly. I'm going to rest first. The rest of the things for today are up to you. After that, Ning left the headquarters, went outside, and stood in the warm spring sun. He sighed deeply. To be honest, Marat's death shocked him more than he thought. Maybe it was because he really regarded this ugly former doctor as his good friend. At this moment, he thought of Marat's horse face again, and thought of drinking with him and imagining the future. Ning always thought that Marat would be assassinated because he didn't bring guards, so he thought that sending him loyal and reliable guards would avoid this ending. Now it seems that history will not be changed so easily. Maybe Marat must leave Paris to completely prevent this from happening. But Marat can't leave Paris. After all, now is the critical time of the revolution, and he is releasing his light and heat in Paris. Ning sighed, and he suddenly realized that what he was thinking now was actually making excuses for himself. Forget it, things have calmed to this point, so let's look to the future. Starting with Marat's death, the Jacobins' policy of terror will become more and more extreme, and then the two remaining Jacobin giants will kill each other. Robespierre will send Danton to the guillotine, and he will be the only one left of the former three giants. In the end, in the coup launched by Fouché and others, Robespierre himself was sent to the guillotine. Ning didn't want Robespierre to end up like this. After all these years of interaction, Ning knew that Robespierre was a noble and self-disciplined good man. Even if he was not his friend, Ning didn't want him to end up like this. In order to avoid things from becoming like this, Ning had to go back and persuade Robespierre to ensure that he was still the moderate Robespierre. He also had to reconcile the contradiction between him and Danton. As for the subsequent coup, Ning was not too worried. After all, unless his military authority was no longer there, it would be a bit difficult to overthrow Robespierre through a coup. Ning paced back and forth in the barracks, thinking about these. He was so focused that he didn't even hear the soldiers who passed by shouting "Long live the general" and just waved his hand mechanically in response. The next day, Berthier prepared the large army to return to the city. Ning just got on his horse and saw Beethoven waiting for him on horseback. Ning, how are you? Beethoven, excellent. I can hear you as long as you speak a little louder. Ning was very happy. He thought that the condition of the music master's ears was not as bad as in history, and he was full of hope that the music master would create more outstanding music. But Beethoven's next sentence was, "It's a pity that I can only understand words, and I can't distinguish pitches at all. My absolute pitch is gone." He said it in a teasing tone, but Ning's expression darkened. Beethoven hurriedly said, "Don't worry. I will never give up music. Just like you said, I will strangle fate by the throat." Ning nodded. At this time, he suddenly realized something. Wait, did I take Beethoven's famous saying away? Damn, I didn't mean it, I was just encouraging him. Ning shook her head. At this time, Beethoven asked again, "Where's David? I asked him to go back to Paris yesterday. He wants to paint a picture for Marat, a very important picture." Ning said this because he knew that David's death of Marat would become a famous painting in the future, and even become a sacred icon for revolutionaries in the era of the Great Revolution. But to others, this is not what he meant. Berthier had an "I understand" expression again, and no one knew what he understood. And Ning said to Berthier, "The troops will be handed over to you during my return to the city. Don't worry." Berthier nodded. Then Ning looked forward and waved his whip. "Let's go, back to the city." Outside Paris, Versailles Palace. Christina was directing the maids to clean up the room. "Hurry up, Frost will be back tomorrow at the latest." "Yes, Your Majesty," the maid who was cleaning the room said half-jokingly. Christina blushed. "What are you talking about? It's a republic now, and there is no queen anymore." "But we are all maids of the queen, and this palace was once the bedroom of the king and queen." The maid said, "Although you are not called the queen, your fiancé commands the entire French army and is very powerful. Isn't that the same as the king?" "Christina, it's different. If you say such incorrect words again, I will have to send you to the guillotine. Look, even Her Majesty the Queen has to get the approval of the Grand Justice of Paris to send someone to the guillotine, but you don't have to look at anyone's face, you can send anyone to the guillotine." The maids probably all knew that Christina was a kind person and would not send anyone to the guillotine easily, so they continued to joke with her. Christina sighed. "Okay, if I were really the queen, you wouldn't dare to joke with me like this, right? You can just say these words to me, but don't let my fiancé hear it. We don't dare to say this in front of him." Chapter 248 Christina. Before entering Paris, Ning first went to Versailles. Versailles has now become a large barracks, and the troops that have completed reorganization in Paris will be transferred to Versailles. The rooms that originally housed the French king's servants and guards have now all become barracks. A large area where the royal family originally lived was also converted into a staff department, and even now there are still quite a lot of clerks working there. The original residence of the king and queen has now become the residence of General Frost. And Ning's return to Versailles is equivalent to going home in every sense. Christina had made preparations early and was waiting in front of the gate with a group of officers. When Ning got off the horse and saw this scene, she couldn't help but joked, "With this scene, I thought you were a princess from some country welcoming the prince who came to get married." Christina's smile was a little awkward. And Ning was confused. "What's wrong?" Christina came forward, held Ning's tiptoes and whispered in her ear, "Consider the impact, don't say such things that will cause misunderstandings. I know you are joking, but the listener will not think so." And Ning said, "Oh. I have to admit that I didn't think too much about joking. I am in this position now, holding the military power of the entire republic, and I have a high reputation among the people. I also married Louis Ville's sister. Even if the feudal system really calculates the order of succession, and Ning now has a weak claim to the crown of France. In this case, a joke I made casually would sound more than just a joke in the ears of others." And Ning frowned. "I know, I will pay attention to it next time." Christina nodded, then changed the subject. "I'm sorry about Marat. He was your good friend, right?" And Ning nodded. "Yes, I met him after I entered the Paris Military Academy, and we often drank and played cards together in the club. He is my like-minded friend." And Ning originally thought that he could look at Marat, Robespierre and others with the mentality of a historical bystander, but now he finds it difficult to do so. After all, he has so many connections with Marat. The so-called bond between people is the accumulation of daily bits and pieces. Even if he was just a drinking buddy who often drank together, his departure is sad. Christina stared at Ning's face and hugged him silently. "My condolences." And Ning quietly enjoyed the hug of his fiancée. After a moment, Christina distanced herself from him and said worriedly, "By the way, I think you should go and see Robespierre. Marat's death seems to have brought him a great shock. He seems to have been possessed by a demon these days. His landlady even came to the Palace of Versailles to complain to me, saying that the gentle Robespierre in the past seemed to have disappeared." And Ning was amazed. "Oh, so that's the case. I'll have a good talk with him." "Christina, Robespierre has sent many people to the guillotine these days, and even Mr. Lavoisier, whom you clearly wanted to protect, almost suffered. I have asked someone to escort Mr. Lavoisier and his family to Marseilles from Paris overnight." "And Ning, is the situation so bad?" "Yes, Robespierre seems to think that all old aristocrats are enemies. He even reached out to the families of some of the Knights of the Sunset. It was Lazare Canet who took action to save them." And Ning couldn't help but frown. Families of the Knights of the Sunset? They have proved their loyalty to the revolution. But the fact that they are old nobles has not changed. Christina paused, then lowered her voice worriedly and said, "Moreover, I feel that someone in Paris is taking the opportunity to instigate. To instigate you and Ning, was it Talleyrand? Or Fouche? No, Fouche has taken the identity of a special envoy to Lyon and has already set off for Lyon. Talleyrand has gone to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and may be sent to Britain in a few days. Although Britain has facilitated the current coalition forces of Prussia, Austria and the Kingdom of Sardinia, and has also transported the old nobles to land in Vendée and other places, Britain itself has not taken direct hostile actions against France. In addition, even if the two countries declared war in this era, they still maintain diplomatic relations and had channels of communication. And Ning curled his lips. These two slippery guys saw that the situation in Paris was not good, so they ran away. In the past, Ning would definitely choose to run away and watch from the sidelines, but now he has no choice. He can only stay in the center of the storm, and when everything is getting crazy, he desperately pulls the reins to prevent things from getting completely out of control. Ning, first, send your father to Marseilles. Everything will be easy once we get there. Ning had already killed all the royalists in Marseilles. In addition, Marseilles had developed industry and commerce, and places with developed industry and commerce were natural strongholds of the Republicans. Christina nodded. I've already told my father, but he refused to leave. He said he is a member of parliament and has immunity. Ning, let him go quickly, otherwise members of parliament will lose their immunity. Also, let Lazare Carnot make a list of scientists in Paris and send them all to Marseilles. No matter what positions they have now, tell them to quit. Christina nodded repeatedly. Yes, I know. Only send scientists? Those poets and writers in Paris. Ning, poets and writers can be asked to join the National Guard. The musicians in Paris have already joined the army as military musicians, and poets and writers should naturally follow. I'll look forward to them completing great works through the blood and fire of the battlefield. I always feel that you are prejudiced against poets and writers. Christina frowned slightly. At this time, she noticed Beethoven in Ning's entourage, and asked with concern, I heard that Ludwig is deaf. Ning, yes, you have to speak very loudly to him, otherwise he can't hear. Christina covered her mouth gently. Oh my God, I will find the best craftsman to make him a pair of hearing aids. Beethoven guessed that Christina was talking about him, so he responded loudly, really loudly, don't worry about me, it's just deafness. I will strangle fate by the throat, it won't make me surrender. Ning, he said so. Christina looked even more sad. Why is God so cruel to take away hearing from such a talented musician? Ning, there is an ancient proverb in the East, saying that when God wants to give a great task to a person, he must first make his heart suffer. Ning recited a long paragraph, and then was surprised to find that her translation plugin did not translate a word. Christina looked at Ning in confusion. This is an ancient Chinese saying. Ning could only say, Christina, you also understand Chinese. Is it the country mentioned in Marco Polo's travels? Yes, it's further east of India. Ning's explanation made Christina's face full of admiration. Fortunately, everyone has become accustomed to Ning's genius in language, otherwise it would be hard to explain. Ning brought the topic back to Marat's death. When will Marat's funeral be held? Christina, 4 days later, his body will be placed in the Pantheon, and before that there will be a grand state funeral. Ning, got it. I'll go to the city to meet Maximilian first. The trend of unlimited expansion must be stopped. Chapter 249 The Widow of Malmaison Castle. As soon as Ning settled down in Versailles, someone came to visit. The person who came was also Ning's acquaintance, Paul Barras, whom she had met once before in Italy. Ning met him in Louis Zvi's study. Just a few years ago, it was in this study that Ning forced Louis Zvi and his Austrian woman to move to the Tuileries Palace. As soon as Barras entered the study, he went straight to the point. You are finally back. Now only you can stop the situation from getting out of control. Now everyone in Paris is in danger. Even the parliamentarians are afraid that one day they will go to the guillotine. Ning, has the situation come to this point? Barras, I don't believe you don't know a little about the current situation in Paris. Before Marat was assassinated, Robespierre was like the ballast of the situation. He has been trying to make the situation not so extreme. After Marat's death, this ballast went crazy and is now desperately sending people to the guillotine. He seems to be paying tribute to his dead friend and keeps sending the old aristocrats to the guillotine. Ning, I already know about this situation. You already know? Is that it? What else? Ning asked. Do you want me to launch a coup and force Robespierre to step down? No, no, I won't do that. Of course, I won't sit back and watch things develop like this. I will go to Maximilien tomorrow. Barras, you have to talk to him. Let him regain his sanity and calm. If this goes on, a considerable part of the National Assembly will become enemies of the Jacobins. And Ning looked at Barras, thinking that after the Jacobins were overthrown, the Directory organized by the Thermidorians who succeeded them was corrupt and incompetent, and everyone was busy lining their own pockets. And Ning did not want to see this group of people in power. The Jacobins at least had revolutionary ideals, but their methods were radical. The Thermidorians were all ambitious and speculators. Thinking of this, and Ning looked at Barras with even sharper eyes. If France is to be handed over to these people, it would be better, and Ning suppressed the thoughts that surged in her mind. Now let's help the Jacobins first. Robespierre is a noble and self-disciplined person. And Ning is more assured that he will serve as the head of France. And Ning, in short, I will persuade Maximilien. I think I still have enough influence on him. Barras looked very worried. He hesitated for a moment, and then said, but there are rumors that Robespierre is very dissatisfied with the situation where you have your own troops. He may want to send another military commissioner. Who said that? And Ning interrupted Barras, this is just a discord between me and Robespierre. Anyone who would do this must be an enemy of France, or maybe an Austrian spy. Is that you, Mr. Paul Barras? Barras shook his head like a rattle. No, 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 it's not me. It's just that someone in Paris is saying. That's why I asked who is saying it. If you know, tell me, and I will immediately send out the Knights of Afterglow to arrest them. One should act decisively when it is time to act. Barras was speechless. And Ning, so, it's not you who is trying to sow discord, is it? Your Excellency, you understand me. I have always been loyal to you. And Ning curled her lips. Huh? I will see your loyalty, I will see it. It turns out that Ning knew very well what kind of person Paul Barras was in history. It's just that this man was quite capable, otherwise Ning would have taken him down long ago. What Ning did now was equivalent to a warning to Paul Barras, telling him not to have those crooked ideas. At this time, the door of the study opened, and Christina came in. Mr. Barras, how about staying for lunch at noon? Barras shook his head repeatedly. No, no, I have to return to Paris. With the current situation in Paris, I can't leave for too long. And Ning, Mr. Barras is now a judge in a court in Paris. No, a special inspector. In that case, I will take my leave first. After that, without waiting for Ning to respond, Barras retreated to the door. After Barras left, Ning said to Christina, this Barras, do you know anything? Christina, he has a good relationship with Madame Beauharnais of Malmaison Castle. There are rumors in the social circle that Paul Barras is going to marry that widow. Ning raised her eyebrows. Wow, Madame Beauharnais of the Malmaison Castle, an acquaintance. In the original history, she would hook up with Napoleon, who had no money, no power, and no fame, and become a bridge between Napoleon and Paul Barras, one of the later directors of the Directory. But now this history has changed. Although Napoleon has not yet made a name for himself, he has become the confidant of His Excellency the General, and with this identity he has gained a pivotal position. To put it bluntly, the current Napoleon is no longer worthy of a widow like Josephine. When he comes back from guarding Sedan, there will be many good families in Paris who want to marry their daughters to this Corsican boy, the favorite of His Excellency the General. Christina keenly noticed the change in Ning's expression, and asked in confusion, do you know this Madame Beauharnais? And Ning, I've heard of her. He replied casually, and then realized something after he finished replying. He hurriedly looked at his fiancée's face, and then saw Christina pouting. When did you hear about her? And Ning, I heard it from Napoleon. But Christina didn't believe it at all. Did you hear it from Napoleon, who is defending Sedan now? I didn't expect he has so much free time. And Ning, well, he hadn't gone to defend Sedan at that time. Then he told me that there was a widow who still had charm in the Malmaison Castle, and she was pretty good. Christina, oh, is that so? Napoleon actually has a habit of liking widows. This is the first time I know about it. And Ning smiled awkwardly, then changed the subject. Let's eat. After eating, I have to go into the city to find Maximilien. Christina sighed. Okay, business is important. Persuade him well. After lunch, Ning went into the city. In order to avoid being recognized by everyone and causing a commotion, and Ning took a carriage into the city and went straight to the venue of the National Assembly. When passing the place de la Revolution, and Ning found that in addition to the original guillotine, 2 new guillotines had been erected on the square. The guillotine is already a very efficient execution tool. This execution tool cannot meet the demand, and 2 new ones have to be erected. From one side, we can see what the current situation in Paris is. The National Assembly is still in the building that was converted from the original royal horse farm, and next door is the ruins of the Tuileries Palace. After these days, the ruins of the palace have been razed to the ground and turned into a large square. The guards at the door of the National Assembly saw the carriage coming, and stepped forward with a serious face to stop the car. Stop. According to the order of the National Assembly, all carriages must not approach the National Assembly within 100 meters. And Ning opened the door and got out of the car. The guard gasped, "My God, long live your excellency." And Ning raised his hand and waved in response, then looked at the stairs in front of him. According to Ning's memory, there should be no place in the National Assembly meeting room where he could talk to Robespierre alone. As long as he entered that hall, everything he said would be heard by the people around him. So Ning said to the guard, "Please tell Mr. Speaker that I am waiting for him in the carriage. I need to talk to him privately." Chapter 250, The Incorruptible Goes His Own Way. The news that Ning was going to meet Robespierre alone in the carriage quickly spread. La Rivelière-le-Bel had a sour face and found Prosperous in the stands. He is the Speaker of the National Assembly and the theoretical head of state, but when Frost asked him to get in the carriage to talk about something, he went there happily. I think it would be better to just appoint Frost as the protector of the country and give him the status of lifelong ruler. Barras, although he did not serve in the National Assembly, he was the head of the Jacobins and the recognized leader of the Jacobins. I asked the general to tighten the reins of the current situation. You have already gone to see him. Lebel curled his lips. I hope it will work. I don't know how many people will suffer if this goes on. Maybe all public figures except the Jacobins will be beheaded. Barras, no. The more wantonly the Jacobins massacre their opponents, the more dissatisfaction they will arouse. Robespierre is a man with too much misophobia. The incorruptible are the outliers in this world. He doesn't understand that there must be necessary compromises in this world. The so-called negotiation is actually an art of compromise. Lebel, will Frost compromise? Of course he will. On the surface, he has been pushing the revolution forward, but in fact he has a very flexible bottom line. He is a pragmatic politician. Barras paused, and said in an admiring tone, he is a man of great skill, unlike the incorruptible. It should be said that we should be thankful that he is here to pull Robespierre's reins. Otherwise, we may have to wait until everyone is tired of the terror of the Jacobins before finding a way to end this madness. Lebel, I don't know how long we have to wait. Yes, so let's hope that the reins will be useful. The good news is that Frost does not agree with the current situation of blind expansion. There is no better news than this. After Barras let out a sigh of relief, Lebel suddenly leaned close to him and whispered, "What you said means that if something happens to Robespierre, Frost will not vent his anger on the National Assembly." Barras glared at Lebel fiercely, "Don't act rashly. Robespierre is expanding his power and wants to use the cord and the guillotine. Frost is trying to clean up Paris. You know what he will do. He is a ruthless man who bombarded traitors with shotgun shells on the streets of Paris. Don't mess with Frost." Lebel, didn't you say that Frost disagrees with the practices of the incorruptible? But he still recognizes him as a friend. At best, this is a disagreement between friends, do you understand? If you do that kind of thing, then you are an enemy, and he will use cannons to deal with his enemies. Barras looked around guiltily, and then warned again, "Don't think in this direction, never." As soon as Robespierre got on the peaceful carriage, he said excitedly, "I heard that you came back from the front, and I was thinking about when to visit you at the headquarters in Versailles. I tell you, I am pulling out those hidden enemies one by one in Paris. Soon the whole of Paris will be purged, and only patriots will remain. And Ning, Maximilian, have you ever thought that sending people to the guillotine on such a large scale will push those who did not oppose us to the opposite side?" Robespierre glared at Ning. "What do you mean? Jean is dead. He was assassinated by a hidden traitor in a despicable way. At this time, we must take swift and decisive measures to completely eliminate the traitor. Marat's full name is Jean-Paul Marat. And Ning, I am also very sad about Jean's death, but this cannot be a reason for us to use the guillotine. Everyone who is sent to the guillotine should have solid evidence to prevent false and wrongful convictions. Robespierre, that's what we do. Everyone who is sent to the guillotine has solid evidence. I know you are afraid of killing innocent people by mistake. I promise that even if there are such things, they are very rare. Robespierre paused and said, besides, even if a few people make mistakes, it doesn't matter. The situation is so critical now. We would rather kill dozens or hundreds of people by mistake than let go of a royalist or Girondist. And Ning was directly silenced by Robespierre. It seems that Robespierre felt from the bottom of his heart that he did nothing wrong. This kind of person cannot be persuaded. No wonder in the original history, he later parted ways with his former friend Danton and others. On the battlefield, Ning never despaired. No matter how bad the situation was, he still felt that there was a turning point. But now facing Robespierre, who showed no sign of confusion, Ning felt helpless for the first time. Could it be that the key to saving Robespierre was to protect Marat? Ning wanted to make a final attempt, so he said to Robespierre, "You were originally very gentle, and you always played the role of holding back Danton and Marat who were rushing in front. It was because of my gentleness that Jean was killed by them in the most despicable way. I am ashamed. You had already noticed such a danger and sent in bodyguards, but I did nothing." Robespierre showed a self-blaming expression. "It can be said that I killed Jean. His death made me understand that kindness to the enemy is cruelty to the same comrades." Ning was shocked. The moderate Robespierre was gone, and now here was the incorruptible man like steel, who would send all the enemies he thought to the guillotine. Ning gave up. Now adopting this kind of terrorist policy is indeed conducive to stabilizing Paris objectively. Although Paris is now beheading crazily, the overall order is actually okay. Let's talk about it after we drive out all the invading troops in France. Robespierre, how long will you stay in Paris? Until the day you are buried, Ning replied. Oh, so, is there any problem on the front line? Generally speaking, there should be no problem. We have defeated the weaker of the three enemy armies. The remaining two are blocked, one at Sedan and the other at the gates of Verdun. The strong fortresses will stop them. Next, after we have added new troops, we will maneuver between the Somme and Marne rivers to lift the siege of the two fortresses. Robespierre, I don't understand military matters, but in short, everything is under your control, right? You can say that. Very good, then we can hold a grand funeral with peace of mind. Ning, a grand funeral. Yes, this funeral must be the death knell for the hidden royalists and Girondists in Paris. Ning, Maximilien, the most die-hard royalist in Paris, has been shot and received by Napoleon's cannons. But the Girondists didn't. Robespierre responded forcefully. For a moment, Ning thought about forcing Robespierre to stop, but then he thought that the policy of terror did maintain the stability of Paris and did strike potential royalists and traitors. So Ning finally made a choice. It is better to have a stable rear than a chaotic rear, even if the price is to pay a lot of innocent blood. As for Robespierre's transformation into a great devil, think about it on the bright side. Now the leader of the four giants of the Jacobin faction is still Frost, and Robespierre is only the second in command. In theory, he can stop at any time. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.